People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners.
There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you entered?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
Hello again, welcome back. You're watching Vote 2026 on Sky News. You may be wondering why we haven't talked a lot about Wales or Scotland in the last few hours, and that's because voting in the Scottish Parliament, in the Welsh Senedd, doesn't start until 9 a.m. Counting, sorry, I should say, doesn't start until 9 a.m. So those results will be coming through during the rest of the day. But Sam, you have been looking into the prospects there, haven't you, for all the parties?
That's right. You can see the odd dot in England of results, but nothing in the Scottish Parliament or in the Welsh Senedd. That's all coming up later today. For me, there's one big point about Scottish and Welsh politics and its relationship with Westminster. We are very used to, and indeed, the separate parliaments in Wales and Scotland were created in order to create different ecosystems, political ecosystems. They weren't all meant to be tethered to Westminster. But I want to show you this. This is how people in Scotland said that they would vote for the Holyrood in the Holyrood elections. And look over time. This light yellow is the SNP, this red line is Labour, and you can see the Tories. And there's a very clear picture here. What happens is that the SNP have been in power for a long time. They go through a lot of turbulence. Of course, they've been through 3 leaders in a handful of years, and Labour benefits all the way through 2021, 2022, 2023, until it gets to midway through 2024. That's the peak of its support, and it overtakes the SNP. And what happens then? Labour gets into power in Westminster. And at that point, you can ski down Labour's figures. Almost immediately, Kier Starmer walks into the big black door in number 10. Down, down, down goes Labour's polling results. I think at this point, Anas Sarwar thought he could be the First Minister. Now, we think there's very little chance of that happening. So what's going on in Scotland looks to be directly correlated with the woes of Keir Starmer's government in Westminster. Now I want you to look at this, because it's a very similar pattern in Wales. Yes, again, of course, there has never been a Welsh Senedd where Labour has not been in power. But is that about to change later today? You can see Labour topping the poll back in 2021, and it started to decline. And then there was the 2024 general election, and the rate of decline increased, and it's now down in the doldrums. Again, linked to what's going on in Westminster. And it's all quite remarkable. If you just zip back up to Scotland, again, look, the SNP have been in power. They've been the biggest party since 2007. They've had the First Minister all the way back there. Sometimes it's been a minority government. In 2011, it was a majority government. In 2021, they governed initially with the help of the Greens. And you would have thought, after 4 consecutive terms in government, the 5th would be very hard to achieve. But it looks as if John Swinney, the new leader of the SNP, I think has been around Scottish politics for a long time, could just be out to snatch that unprecedented fifth term. The Scottish system never designed to allow the SNP into power. Now they're about to cement the SNP's government in Holyrood for the fifth consecutive time.
Sam, thank you very much to Nadeem and Aisha. Nadeem, what are your thoughts about Wales and Scotland from Reform's point of view?
Look, I think that a good result for us would be to become the official opposition in Scotland and to be within touching distance of winning the Senate in Wales. I think if I were Anas Sarwar, and he was probably the first serious heavyweight Labour politician to come out and call for Kier Starmer to step aside, he hasn't changed his mind throughout the campaign. I suspect, if he comes third in these elections, he's going to be pretty mightily cheesed off, putting it mildly, and will probably be one of the big voices to push, if not for a replacement, but at least a date when Keir Starmer leaves number 10, and to get him to commit to that. So I suspect he's probably already talking to Ed Miliband and others about that, because it just feels like a massive body blow to Anas's ambitions. I know Anas well. He's a very talented politician, very smart politician, and he very clearly came out and said, Keir Starmer has to go. And I agree with that. I've been saying it all night. I know Aisha is in denial about Keir Starmer having to go, but let's see what happens. But I mean, Wales will be a great opportunity for us if we win to be able to form a government and to demonstrate that we can govern. Dan Thomas has done a great job in the campaign. I think we've got a very clear manifesto dealing with things like the cost of living, that welfare and social housing should be for Welsh electors. Getting rid of the blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed limit is very popular. So, look, let's see what happens. But I'm optimistic.
Well, look, I'm going to be very interested in the results in Scotland and Wales, particularly Scotland. That's where I'm from. And I do really feel for Anas Sarwar, because he is head and shoulders above any leader of the Labour Party we've had in Scotland for a long time. He's very articulate, he's very presentable, he's very smart. And I think... And
there is a correlation, isn't there, between his woes and...
Oh, absolutely, and absolutely. And you can see, in fact, just before the elections, the general election, there was a very significant by-election, the Rutherglen and Hamilton by-election, where Labour only had one MP in Scotland for a long time. They got a second MP, Michael Shanks, and it was felt that Anas was, really doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And then, of course, Labour did very well in terms of getting about 30 Labour MPs. And it felt like, at that point, it was almost like even SNP people were saying to me, I think Anas Sarwar is going to be the next First Minister of Scotland. And then it all sort of turned really quickly. And I think there's lots of mistakes made, but I think there's one policy that really did damage, I think, Wales and Scotland. That was a winter fuel allowance. I think that was very, very, very damaging, particularly in Scotland, because it is very cold in Scotland. And it's something that I think was very kind of problematic. Now, you talk about Anas Sarwar being the first person to really go over the top and call for Keir Starmer to resign. What was really interesting at that point is that is when the Cabinet could have done something about it, and they chose not to, right? And that weekend, there was so much fevered speculation, there were phone calls, there was operations going around, and I think that weekend is the weekend where the Prime Minister came perilously close to being toppled. But actually, the kind of grandees in the Cabinet, including people like Ed Miliband, said no. We've looked over the precipice. We don't think this is a good idea. So my feeling is that if they didn't go for it when Anas called for it the first time, they're probably not going to just do Anas. And you might be right. Anas may well, I'm sure he will call for him to go again. He may resign. Who knows? It depends in terms of what happens. But I think it's a great shame for him, because I think he is a very talented politician. And as for Wales, I think it's going to be so interesting to see how Reform does. But remember, there was a lot of tactical voting at that Caerphilly by-election. So let's just see how all of that kind of plays out. But, you know, in terms of the Labour story, it will be heartbreaking for so many people because Labour and Wales are synonymous. You know, you think of great Labour figures, Neil Kinnock, Nye Bevan, you know, Keir Hardie, who, you know, ended up as a Welsh MP. You know, Labour and Wales and, of course, Scotland are so part of the history and tradition. Labour has only ever been in power since devolution, so this will be a big blow if Labour does badly.
Yeah, counting begins in about 2.5 hours' time, so we will know more as the day progresses. Thank you both very much for the moment. We are going to take you to a break. When we come back, plenty more results, plenty more analysis. Do stay with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners.
There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you entered?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
Hello there, very good morning. You're watching Sky News. It's our Vote 2026 special. If you are just waking up, if you're just joining us, if you are wondering what has been happening overnight when it comes to all those votes that are being counted, well, let's find out. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Give us an overview, Sam.
Let's look. We are now at 1,115 seats have been counted out of the total in England of 5,000. Here's the picture, and there's a clear winner. 340 seats of those have been won by Reform. They are the clear winners of tonight's overnight local elections. And this all comes at the expense, pretty much, of the Labour Party. They are down 247 votes, and the Tories, who are down 158. But for reasons I'm going to explain in a bit, actually, the Tories, slightly more reasons for optimism than the Labour Party. Lib Dems up 51, down 14, so they're on 237. The Greens, we're still waiting to see whether that figure goes up. A lot of the Green areas haven't yet been counted. Let's look at this. This is the loss rate, so the proportion of seats that Labour were defending that they still hold on to. And essentially, they're holding on to just about a third of the seats that they're contesting, which is the same figure, frankly, that they won last year. Dire set of local elections last year, dire this year. And let's see where our analyst, Michael Thrasher, thinks that comes out. He has taken the results we've seen so far and projected how many results, how many losses he expects Labour to have overall. It's not good, it's not OK, It's not bad, it's well and truly terrible. In fact, I can see this needle has actually got a bit worse since the last time we looked at it. It's properly in the terrible territory, just shy of 2,000. In fact, he's put a number on it, 1,864 seats he expects Labour to lose. We'll find out whether he was right a little bit later, but it's Michael Thrasher, so he will be. And that's on the basis of 428 seats at 545. Let's do the same with the Tories and look at their loss rate. And this actually is why I think the Tories might have some reason for cheer. In 2025, they basically lost 68% of the seats that they were defending. That figure's gone down. It's now only 44% of the seats. So you can see this bar of seats that they've held on to has increased. That's good news for Kemi Badenoch. Let's look at their sort of swingometer. It's not good. It's not, well, it might be OK. It's on the cusp between OK and bad. Minus 599 on the basis of 291 seats declared. But it's not properly bad and it's certainly not terrible, which is where Michael Thrasher has Labour. Right, let's look at some new results. This is interesting. This is the first council that Reform have gained outright. It's Newcastle under Lyme. And you can see there, Reform UK won 27 seats. That's 10 seats from the Tories and 17 seats from the Labour Party. So that's their first. We haven't seen many councils actually go to Reform. What we've seen largely is Labour, in particular, losing councils to no overall control. So this one's a bit of an anomaly in the overall picture. Hartlepool. Now, big political area, well known in our politics. Peter Mandelson's stomping ground, scene of the 2021 by-election loss, which nearly cost Kier Starmer his career as Labour leader. Reform there, taking seats, winning all 12 seats. Look, 0-0-0 for Labour, Tory and other at the 12 seats at the expense a bit of the Tories, but a lot of Labour. Right, let's look at what that looks like in map form. Here you've got the Tories and Labour. Last time these seats were contested, now it's all Reform. And that's the story across the Red Wall. This is Wigan, Greater Manchester, where Lisa Nandy, Angela Rayner, even the Prince over the water, potentially, and Andy Burnham should have an effect. But no, in the seats that are contested in Wigan, all Reform. So you can see there how things are shaping up. It's a bad night for Labour. Just how bad will be determined through the day. Don't forget you've got Scotland and Wales to come, which look painful for the party. So we'll hear from Kier Starmer, I think, in the not-too-distant future. The question is, does he get the tone right? Is there a sense of empathy? There'll be a lot of Labour MPs hurting, watching councillor friends be defeated. Does he manage to find a language to soothe things? Or has the scale of the losses jolted the party such that he might be in peril?
Yeah, you make some really good points. Let's speak to Nadeem and Aisha for the last time. Thank you very much, by the way, for sticking with us for all these hours. And I guess a bit of reflection, really, from both of you of where things stand this morning. And Aisha, you know, we come to you first because this does look dire. There's no other word for it, is there, for the Labour Party?
It's a pretty brutal set of results for Labour so far. I mean, let's see where we get to with the final count. And there's going to be a great sense of loss and sadness, and the emotions are going to be running very high because to have lost so many good councillors and the amount of work that they do, they are really the foot soldiers of the Labour Party. They're the connective tissue, them and their families. They do thankless work, the unglamorous side of politics, but the really important, delivering the leaflets, knocking on doors, being there when the leader or a cabinet minister wants to visit. So there'll be a profound sense of sadness and loss. There'll also be a lot of anger, and there'll be kind of confusion and panic and a bit of fear in terms of, you know, what's coming next, because you can't extrapolate everything from these sets of elections, but you look year on year, and of course there's a direction of travel. And what the direction of travel is indicating is that Labour is not cutting through with the public. Labour is clearly unpopular. People are turning away in terms of many people going to Reform. Reform's had a very, very good night so far. Let's see what the results are from the Greens, and, you know, still got a long way to go in terms of all the results. I think that the big test will be, how does the party react to this? How does Downing Street react to this? Is it going to be, oh, this is just a flesh wound, more of the same, midterm blues, etc., etc.? Personally, I don't think that's good enough. I think there has to be some honesty with the public and with the party. I think that's the only way to try and move on productively. But it is also very difficult at this stage to think, right, there's an easy, quick fix to this. You just go to the right because Reform's done well, or you just go lurch to the left because Zap Polanski's done well. It is much more difficult and more complicated. And that deep thinking, there has to be some quite honest, robust conversations, I think, within the Labour Party about what needs to happen, because just being in denial and saying more of the same is not going to be good enough, because there is a real chance that Nigel Farage could become Prime Minister. In fact, you could have a situation where you've got Nigel Farage, who's Prime Minister Westminster, you've got a nationalist SNP government in Scotland, you've got a Welsh nationalist government in Wales, you've got a nationalist party in Northern Ireland. There could actually be really big fundamental questions about the Constitution and the Union. So I think this is a profound moment. And also the other thing, final thing I'll say for Dean is, I think the days of the stranglehold of two-party politics is gone.
Yeah, that is the theme of tonight, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely right. And I think that we've now built an infrastructure, and you're seeing it play out tonight, of a serious party with credible candidates in local government, and we'll do the same for the general election, a serious set of policies on immigration, on cost of living, on the mad net zero stuff that Ed Miliband's putting through. Reform will, in my view, deliver for this country, because we have been clear-eyed about where the pain is, where the mistakes of the previous Conservative government, where the tragic mistakes of this Labour government have taken place, and we've got the policies to deliver against it. And so I think it is a historic night. I agree with Nigel. It's no longer about left or right. We're taking votes and going into Labour, traditional Labour heartland, in the north, in the East and West Midlands, in Essex, into deep Conservative territory. I think both main parties have done badly tonight. You know, the Conservatives will put a spin on it that losing 600 councillors is a good night. I think they need to be careful with that, because those 600 councillors, their families will not see it as a good night. Labour's had a catastrophic night, and I think we need a general election.
OK. And just in a sentence, you still believe Kier Starmer can stay in post?
I think for the foreseeable future, because I just do not think... I don't think there's any plot right now where there is a candidate ready to go, and I think that he will not want to go. I think, to be fair to him, he's only the fourth Labour leader that's ever won an election from the Conservatives. He won't want to go anywhere, but I do think if things carry on, things can't just carry on, and I think it would be the whole of the Labour Party, including him, his team and everybody, needs to look at the reality, which is a very good night for reform, the real chance of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister, and think really, really carefully about country above party and above any one person's job. And I think the whole party is going to have to reflect on that prospect. I think you have just beautifully described a lame duck Prime Minister from one of the most senior Labour members of the party. I'm also a broadcaster. I'm quite independent-minded.
I don't disagree with you, but if you put that last description that Aisha just delivered into ChatGPT, it will tell you that is the description of a lame duck Prime Minister. Okay.
All right, well, listen, on that thought, we will say thank you both very much indeed. It's been great having you with us.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed your analysis and debate as well. It's been great fun. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, plenty more analysis as Labour suffer big losses as reform surges in England's local elections. Do stay with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners.
There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you went over?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
To the results
the analysis
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Welcome back to Vote 2026. The MP Carl Turner, who sits as an independent after having the Labour whip suspended, joins us now. Great to have you on the programme. Thank you very much. A disastrous night for Labour. What are your thoughts?
Good morning. Well, it's certainly more than a flesh wound, isn't it? It's catastrophic in some areas. We were defending 8 seats in Hull. We lost 7 directly to Reform and 1 to the Lib Dems. Catastrophic results for us, and we expect that to play out in the rest of England. We've not got the results, of course, from Scotland and Wales, but we expect poor results for us there as well. It's a bad night.
Worse than expected?
Well, look, I mean, people are playing it down. There was sort of suggestions that we might lose up to 1,850 seats, and we think it's probably going to be fewer than 1,500, but losing 1,500 seats when you're defending 2,500 seats is fairly bad, isn't it? I mean, you can't really say there's nothing to see here, let's plough on more of the same. There's got to be significant change, in my view.
What went wrong?
Well, look, on the doorstep in East Hull and across the city, I'm afraid to say it was Kier Starmer that came up. That's just the truth. I'm not happy about it. But that was what was coming up time and again. Policy a little bit, the winter fuel debacle and the welfare benefits stuff a bit. The fact that we can't speak about the policies that we are enacting, which will change lives for the better, because of the Mandelson stuff. That's the stuff that was coming up in terms of policy from the government. But the real thing was Keir Starmer's leadership, and the fact that, I'm afraid to say, and this really does pain me, I mean it sincerely, by the way, Keir Starmer is more toxic on the doorstep in East Hull than Jeremy Corbyn ever was.
So you're saying we need to see him go and someone else come in. Who should that be?
I'm not saying that, actually. I don't think we should be dancing to the tune of reform and Nigel Farage saying this was a referendum on Kier Starmer's premiership and he's got to go. I think that would be a mistake, frankly. You look round the Parliamentary Labour Party, who's going to pick up the mantle? That's the reality of where we are. We're a bit stuck. But what we do need to do, I listened to an interview from John McDonnell earlier, what we do need to do, in my experience and my view, is listen to the PLP. Listen to backbenchers. Don't treat us as cannon fodder, voting material. Don't treat us as the legal necessity to get things through. Listen to us, consult with us, roll the pitch when you bring in policy in that we've never heard of and never been promised in manifestos, and behave with reasonable respect towards the backbenches. Don't treat us with contempt. And I'm afraid to tell you, Keir Starmer's leadership has treated backbenchers with utter contempt. He said a few months ago he's going to start listening. I've not seen any evidence of that.
So you're clearly angry, and it's understandable, but what is the solution? If you were to speak to Sir Keir later on today, what would you say to him in terms of what he needs to do next?
Well, look, I think he's got to start with an apology to the country, to the electorate. We promised to be different. We promised not to be chaotic. We promised not to be incompetent. We promised to be holier than thou. That was the promise in the 2024 general election. And I'm afraid to say that's not been delivered. So what I would start with is I'm sorry. I would apologise to all those Labour activists, those councillors in Hull who've lost their seats, the councillors and the campaigners and the community activists up and down the country who have lost seats as a result of the unpopularity of Kier Starmer. Start from there and then build upwards.
I've got Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor, with me. He's got a question for you, if that's all right.
He always has.
Good morning, Sam. Hello, Carl. You dance around this subject the whole time, Carl. But it is quite clear to me that you have completely lost confidence in Keir Starmer. You spent months blaming his advisers. You spent months blaming his cabinet. Why do you excuse him other than he was once a personal friend?
Because I know him a bit, Sam, is the truth. And I think he is capable of delivering. But I do think he's had bad advice over the months and, frankly, for a long time. I think he's capable of delivering, though, and I'm holding on to that hope. That's the truth. I don't want him gone. And you look round, as I've said, you look round the PLP, who's going to replace him at the minute? There isn't anybody. So let's not start carrying on like that. Let's try and build from this terrible position into something like. It might be beyond the point of no return, but I'm hopeful that it's not.
OK, Carl Turner, MP, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you coming on this early. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is it for Vote 2026. My thanks to Sam Coates, Aisha Hazarika, also Nadeem Zahawi. Thanks to you as well if you've stayed with us all night. Well done. We congratulate your stamina. Plenty more coverage here on Sky News with Kamali Melbourne and Anna Joan. Next, Nigel Farage this morning suggesting Reform UK is on course for a general election victory after taking council seats from Labour in the early local election results. Keir Starmer's party, of course, hemorrhaging results overnight. Plenty more to come throughout the day, right here on Sky News. Good morning.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 7 o'clock and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. It's a big day ahead.
So results from local elections in England pour in and a clear picture is emerging.
And it's Reform UK who are seeing the biggest of gains, with Nigel Farage claiming a historic change in British politics.
A devastating picture for Labour and the Prime Minister, with significant losses across councils in England.
We'll have all the local election coverage. We'll also go to the Middle East as President Trump says the ceasefire with Iran is still in place despite there being fire across the Strait of Hormuz.
Plus, we'll have the latest on the hantavirus-infected ship that's now on its way to Tenerife. Hello and a very good morning and thanks for joining us here today. So it's a seismic day in British politics as the results of elections in England, Wales and Scotland will come in and so far reveal a terrible night for Labour. Overnight, we've had some results of local council elections in England, where counting has been happening through the night, with Scotland and Wales due to start counting later on today.
But the picture so far is pretty clear. Reform UK made huge gains across England, with Labour bearing the brunt of the losses. The Conservative Party, though, was suffering too. Now, the results will undoubtedly pile more pressure on the Prime Minister and his leadership. We've got a really dynamic day ahead. So let's just go through where we are right now, looking at the current state of play. As Well, are we just after 7 o'clock in the morning? These results coming in, as we say, the results in Scotland and Wales will come in later on. We've got many other results to come in later, but you can see Reform UK there, way ahead and making huge gains at councils that are being contested all across England. Our election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher, has described this as not just midterm blues for the Labour Party, but actually a seismic, profound, existential crisis for the party as Labour suffer losses all across England. Those gains being made by Reform. The Conservatives have lost seats as well. And the Greens, they're showing in fifth place. Currently, many of the seats and the councils that the Greens were looking to really challenge in have not reported back yet. They'll be getting some of those back in London later on today, so we'll see exactly how well the Greens have done.
And you can see that the Conservatives suffering, as we say, as well as Labour. However, they have had a success in Westminster City Council. Let's just take you there. They have been declaring in the last few minutes. You can see the figures there. Retaking Westminster City Council will be a moment for the Tories in an otherwise perhaps disappointing night. The party spokesman has already said this shows they're coming back in London, but we'll wait to see. A lot of the London councils will be counted later on today.
And you can see there from the results, that's a loss, again, from the Labour Party. So let's just take you through the story as it played out overnight. Now, in Greater Manchester, and this was big, Labour lost Tameside Council to no overall control. Now, Tameside in Greater Manchester is an area that the Labour Party had previously held for 47 years.
Reform UK, changing politics for good, 1,280 votes.
Well, in Essex, it was all cheers in Basildon as Reform snatched the win for the St Martin's ward. Sam Jornet was Reform's first councillor to be elected there, and he spoke to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, after the result was announced.
I'm over the moon with what we've done. 11 seats for Reform UK in Basildon is an incredible achievement. The volunteers, the candidates and now councillors done a wonderful job, and we're going to build on this. As the local elections in Basildon are done on a thirds basis, this time next year we're coming back for the other 14 and we will take the administration.
That's Sam Jornet in Basildon. But here, the Reform leader Nigel Farage has said that these results that we've seen thus far mark an historic change in British politics. He says the traditional left and right dynamic is now out of the window. Now, earlier in the night, we heard from the deputy leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who said Labour is suffering seismic collapse.
What we are witnessing is that the red wall of the Midlands and the North is being repainted a much brighter, more optimistic turquoise wall. And that will be the big news of the next 18 to 24 hours.
Well, Justice Minister Sarah Sackman conceded it was a tough night, but attempted to downplay the significance for the Prime Minister's leadership.
The early results are very difficult. They're a bitter pill to swallow. But I think you've got to put this in context as well. Midterms, local elections are very often a free hit at the government because people think, look, I've got nothing to lose. It's just a local election.
Now, as we've been saying, the vote counting in Scotland and Wales will begin at 9 o'clock. So we will then get a real picture of how these election results are playing out for the parties all across the country. Polling is suggesting currently that Labour could lose its dominance in the Senedd. That's the Welsh Parliament, of course, for the first time in that body's history, more than 100 years of Labour control in Wales. It could well be gone when we get the results in from the Senedd elections.
Yeah, Scotland and Wales are going to be really interesting as the day goes on. None of those votes counted as yet. So let's get a little bit of the story of the day. We can cross to Downing Street and talk to our political correspondent, Lucy McDade, who's there. So a really bad night, Lucy, for the Labour Party and for Kier Starmer behind you in number 10.
Yeah, absolutely. This set of elections, they are the biggest test of the Prime Minister's premiership, Labour's time in office since the general election of 2024. They did know it was going to be a bad night. We heard it just now, and I'm sure we'll hear it plenty of times today, that midterm elections are usually very challenging for a governing party. But this is a party, as we can see from the slim snapshot that we have now, is a party that's losing support all over the country, particularly at the moment to Reform UK. What is crucial here is that for many Labour MPs, for many Labour councillors, party members across the country, today, yesterday as well, was the measure at which they would decide the Prime Minister's fate. This is why for the Prime Minister waking up this morning, knowing that it was going to be a challenging day, certainly won't soften the blow for the results that we are seeing, losing in places like Hartlepool and Thameside, losing in the backyards of the likes of Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, senior figures within the party, senior figures who have criticised the direction of the Labour Party. The bad thing for the Prime Minister this morning is that we only have a slim snapshot at the moment. We only have an England picture. Thousands more councils are yet to declare. We haven't heard any results yet from Wales and Scotland. Wales is where the Labour Party was founded. Already there, they are ceding. They are saying that they are going to lose power in Wales for more than 100 years of dominance there. So for the Prime Minister waking up to a bad set of results, they know it is likely to get even worse. I think what's important to pick up on, I know from conversations I've had in the past few days, there are people, there are MPs willing to come out today and call for the Prime Minister to resign. But apart from the usual expected handful of MPs, we haven't yet had those calls. I think Labour are probably waiting to see what the scale of the losses they are facing today, what those results are like. But from the people I've spoken to in the week, there isn't necessarily a clear successor to Kier Starmer, so that could be what saves him today. The other thing is that we are seeing the fracturing of the political landscape. Yes, we are standing here on Downing Street this morning talking about reform success. What we haven't had yet is a very clear indicator of how parties like the Greens are doing. The big challenge for the Prime Minister, the big challenge for Labour is how after today you regroup around the table and you look at what the direction of this party needs to be when it is splintering support to parties on the left and the right. That is what is going to be really challenging. Of course, for the Prime Minister, for him, he is thinking about his fate. But I think there's a bigger, more existential question that politicians are going to be asking themselves after today, and that is how all of their parties move forward in a world where the landscape, people are losing trust in all mainstream political parties.
And Lucy, I don't know what to make of the symbolism of someone sweeping up behind you. Is it a new broom that is needed? Because, of course, the pressure continuing on the PM this morning. And we're seeing some reporting in some of the newspapers, aren't we, as well, that someone close to him in his cabinet may have actually advised him it's time to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that conversations have been ongoing about what happens to the Prime Minister, and Downing Street certainly hasn't been denying that these have been taking place. Instead, what they've been arguing is that we are in a period of great global instability. We've got the conflict in the Middle East. I mean, you look at Wales, I mentioned that again. The First Minister there, Eluned Morgan, has been talking on the election campaign, saying that she wants Keir Starmer to focus on dealing with that conflict. She certainly hasn't been welcoming him to Wales to campaign on the election trail, and I think that says a lot about how people feel about Keir Starmer as leader of the Labour Party. As you say, I think the one thing maybe saving him is that there are multiple potential contenders to take over as Labour leader. You've got Andy Burnham, for example. A group of MPs really support him coming back into Westminster. Some senior MPs as well. You've got the deputy leader of the party, Lucy Powell, saying that she would like to see him come back. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, his name has been circling Westminster for months. And as you say there, Ed Miliband is reported to have had conversations with Keir Starmer about the future of his time in number 10 if these results turn out to be as bad as the polls are predicting. What could save Keir Starmer is actually that there isn't a clear successor, and they've been arguing all along. When you look at the Conservatives, they replaced leader time and time again. They don't want to look like that's exactly what they are doing. So I think this morning we have a really unclear picture of what lies ahead for the Prime Minister. I think what is absolutely clear, and what MPs say to me in conversation, is that even if it isn't today that the Prime Minister goes, if it's not over the weekend, there are going to be questions remaining about whether or not he can lead the party into the next election.
Yeah, so many questions for Kier Starmer as the day goes on. Lucy, thanks very much indeed. So many questions for Kier Starmer. Nigel Farage will really want his moment, won't he? He's had a really good night. We do expect to hear from him later on this morning. In the meantime, I think it's worth getting an overview of what's happened overnight. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been up all night and he's got all the latest stats.
So we've had over 1,000 seats, 1,133 at the moment, and there is an undisputed winner at the moment. That's Reform UK. They have picked up 353 seats. All of them new. They weren't really contesting the elections the last time this set of seats was held, and a clear loser. Look at this. The Labour Party down 248, only gaining 2, and the Tories also a difficult night for them, 163. We haven't yet really seen the green surge that has been talked about. That's partly just because the seats what they might in the councils that they might do well in haven't counted yet, and the Liberal Democrats up 51 to 237. Let's look at where this might compare, and you can see that last year the Labour Party lost 66% of the seats it was defending. Now, the figure of how many it has lost this time has bounced around considerably through the night, but currently, actually, it is doing less badly than it did last year, and it is losing 51% of the seats it is contesting. It is held on to about half, 49%. So that might just be a little bit of less bad news, but that figure ebbs and flows depending on what seats and what councils are being counted. Michael Thrasher has a gauge where he projects the number of councils and seats or particularly seats that the Labour Party and Tory Party are going to win or lose. And at the moment, Michael Thrasher, again, this has moved around quite a lot, projects that the Labour Party is on course for a bad night, losing 1,294 seats. So let's look at the equivalent for the Tories, and there they seem to be on course for a much better night than last time, losing 39% of the seats that they're contesting, as opposed to last year, where they lost 68%. And you can see, again, we've got the gauge for the Tories, and they're doing OK, projected to lose 531 seats. Some of those seats last time round were seats where the Tories were doing particularly well because of the vaccine bounce. Now, let's look at some individual councils. This is Newcastle Underline. And this one's significant because this is a Reform gain from the Conservatives. We've had a lot of councils that have gone from Labour to no overall control. This is the only one so far where Reform have actually gained it outright. What's the picture? Well, Reform have picked up 27 seats. Where have they picked that up from? Well, some of them from the Tories, 10, and some of them losses from Labour, which is 17. Now, let's look at a particularly notable area of our politics, which is Hartlepool, Peter Mandelson's old stomping ground. It's an area, Labour heartland, that Kier Starmer failed to retake in 2021, nearly resigned as a result. But there's a really clear picture here with Reform picking up all of the seats that were contested. 4 from the Tories, 7 from Labour. But I want to show you the map, which really underscores the change since the last time these wards were contested. Then the more rural areas were all Tory blue, the more inner urban areas were Labour red. Now it's a complete rout in favour of the Reform UK party. And that's the picture all over the place. This is Greater Manchester, Wigan, Lisa Nandy, the glow of Andy Burnham's Greater Manchester Mayoralty. All should be in operation. You can see all red going to all turquoise. Redditch in Worcestershire. Again, you can see the same picture. Red in the north, blue in the south now. Pretty much all turquoise. And you can see how the share of the vote, the percentage of people voting different ways has... And you can see that essentially the Reform UK vote is coming both from the Tories and from Labour. A couple of early London results. Westminster, well, that's going to be a big night for the Tories. They have gained that council outright from Labour. Most of the gains that we saw overnight were to Reform. Actually, in London, Conservative brand still seems to be holding up, taking 9 seats direct off Labour. It's a pretty similar picture in Wandsworth. Let's have a look at that, where Labour have lost that to no overall control. But the picture is the same. Labour lose 7, the Conservatives gain 7. And then one more anomaly, which I think is quite interesting. Richmond, the Liberal Democrats have held that. consolidating, but at the expense of the Greens. Something of a surprise, that. But the Greens have done OK elsewhere. In Oxford, you can see that they have triggered the loss of that council to no overall control, picking up 5 seats at the expense of Labour. Some people think that the Greens could have done a bit better. But overall, I think there's a clear winner and a clear loser. It is for the Labour Party to decide just how bad it is.
All right, Sam, for now, thank you so much for that analysis. Of course, more from Sam and the rest of the politics team, of course, throughout the day as we continue to try and understand these election results. As Sam was pointing out there, and I think it's fascinating because we recorded a podcast earlier this morning where it looked way worse for the Labour Party in terms of their losses than it perhaps seems it is now. It's still really bad, but perhaps not as bad as a couple of hours ago. But that could change again as we move through the day. Yeah, and I think what will be particularly painful is where they've lost seats as well. They've lost them in, as Sam was pointing out, in sort of Labour heartlands, you know, Greater Manchester, Wigan, Tameside, exactly. And the MPs in those constituencies where seats have been lost in the councils are held by people like Angela Rayner and Lisa Nandy. And so it's going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. And as we say, just a fraction of the votes counted so far. I think it's 46 out of, I haven't got it written down, 130 something. I don't have it. So
we've still got a lot to come, is what I'm trying to say.
Lots to go. All right, of course, we'll have more coverage of the local elections throughout the day, but we must turn to the Middle East because there has been more violence in the Strait of Hormuz overnight. Now, President Trump says the US is still negotiating with Iran despite that exchange of fire.
Yeah, the US Central Command said it targeted Iranian military facilities after responding to attacks on its Navy ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian news agency said several explosions were heard near the city of Bandar Abbas and at a pier on Qasem Island. Well, Iran accused Washington of violating the ceasefire, but the president called the strikes a love tap and said it remains in place.
We took our 3 destroyers and we rammed them through some pretty big stuff today, and we knocked the hell out of them. The destroyers weren't hurt in any way. The people weren't hurt, but they were firing at us, and we were firing back at them. And our firepower was a hell of a lot stronger than theirs, and they knocked the hell out of them. The plan is very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It cannot have a nuclear bomb, and it's not going to have. And they're really at the end of the line. Really are at the end of the line.
Well, let's cross live to Dubai. Sally Lockwood is there for us. Morning to you, Sally. So the president maintaining the ceasefire is still in place despite exchange of fire overnight. So what's going on?
Yeah, that's right. Neither side is willing to declare that this ceasefire is over. But certainly here on the ground, it feels like escalation in all but name. The Ministry of Defence here in the UAE have reported intercepting more missiles and drones fired at the country from Iran this morning, around 4 hours ago at 6:30 this morning local time. No reports of any damage, but that is the 3rd attack on the UAE this week. The US continues to play these attacks down. They do not want to acknowledge that this ceasefire could be in danger of collapse. And these attacks on the UAE follow significant exchange of fire overnight between the US and Iran, each side accusing the other of firing first. So the Iranians said that areas were struck and targeted in the port of Bandar Abbas, which is in the south of Iran. You can get a ferry there normally from the UAE, and in the island of Qasem, which is the biggest Iranian island in the Strait of Hormuz. They're also reporting that areas were targeted in western Tehran, civilian areas, they're saying. Now, the US is saying that this was self-defense, that they targeted missile launch sites in the south of the country in response to unprovoked attacks from Iran on 3 US Navy destroyers that were trying to pass the Strait of Hormuz safely. Iran said that they damaged those vessels. The US say that no damage was caused to US assets. So there we have it. That's what happened overnight, certainly in an extremely volatile situation, and it feels escalatory. Nevertheless, at the moment, the ceasefire is still in place. Neither side wants to acknowledge that this ceasefire could be unravelling because the alternative is a return to all-out fighting, which no one seems to want at this stage. But certainly the US has said that they do not want to see a return to escalation, that line from US Central Command overnight. And the Iranians, interestingly, said that civilian areas of Western Tehran were targeted in cooperation with other countries. That could be why we're seeing once again another attempted attack on the UAE this morning from Iran. For now, the ceasefire remains in place, but it's extremely precarious. The Iranians apparently are still considering the latest proposal from the US. We're still awaiting their response, but all of this diplomacy is happening now at the same time as an exchange of fire.
All right, Sally, for now in the UAE, thank you for that. Let's return to the local elections. I'm pleased to say we can hear from the government now. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, joins us now live. John Healey, thank you very much for being with us. Bad night for Labour. Where's it gone so wrong?
Good morning. Well, first of all, recognition and respect to all the candidates of all parties that have stood in this election. It's a big step to put yourself forward for election and the judgment of voters, and especially for our Labour candidates. They fought a hard campaign, which has been really tough at times, and it's clear from early results that in some parts we're holding good Labour councillors and councils like Lincoln and Reading and parts of London. But in too many areas, too many Labour councillors are losing their seats, and I know that national sentiment has played a part in making their job harder. OK, national sentiment. What does that mean? What's your analysis as to where it has gone so wrong, Mr Healey? Historic losses at this stage. Not all the votes are in, but it's not looking good at this point. Well, I think we always see people voting locally, taking account of national sentiment. What's happened here, I think, is that we're less than 2 years into a 5-year term of a national government. People have seen some of the changes that they voted for: 6 cuts in interest rates to bring down mortgages, NHS waiting lists down by 400,000, new Labour renters' rights, protections against being kicked out of people's homes without good reason, and also the low paid for the first time having a right to sick pay. But is this enough? No. Is it starting to make a difference in many people's lives? Yes. But it's clear we have to go further, we have to be bolder, and I think Keir would acknowledge we have to deliver more, we have to be bolder, and I think he would acknowledge also we have to do more to give people a sense of hope for the future. Yeah, you've used the phrase national sentiment for the second time, so I'm trying to understand exactly what you mean by that. Do you mean that just because the party is so unpopular across the country, you've done badly here? There's always going to be links between the parties standing nationally and the way that people vote, including for local elections. And we've all got to take some responsibility for that, especially for those of us in Parliament. And I don't want to downplay how serious the results are for Labour. But I was elected as an MP 2 years before being part of that Labour government in 1999, when we lost over 1,100 councillors in that election, but we went on then to win the 2001 and the 2005 elections. And we've got to work our way back. We've got to win back the confidence. We've got to demonstrate to people the differences that delivering what they voted for will start to make. But above all, we've got to give them some hope for the future. And for me, you can't be hopeful about the future without security. And that's why, faced with the global conflicts, we've got to step up on national security. And Kier Starmer has said we will do that by spending more on defence. We've got to be able to step up on economic security by demonstrating how we're acting to help people with rising costs and business confidence. And when people are fearful and worried and concerned and insecure online and on their streets, we've got to act on that insecurity as well, and we will. You'll hear more, I think, from Kier Starmer in the days ahead, and you'll certainly see next week in the King's speech the sort of steps that we can start to take to give people that greater sense of security, greater hope for the future, a confidence that Britain is going again in the right direction. Secretary of State, you say you all take responsibility, but as the Prime Minister, he must take the most responsibility. He's described as toxic on the doorstep. Many observers describe him as a drag on the party. He's historically unpopular. What responsibility does he take? He takes a great deal of the responsibility. I know he feels it deeply. I've seen the way that he is preparing to do that. But I would just say to people, look, he's one of only 4 Labour leaders in 120 years that has won an election. He's won a mandate from the public for 5 years, and we're less than 2 years into that. And at this time, with everything going on in the world, rising threats, greater conflict, a oil price crisis looming, the last thing that people would expect is for a Labour Party to turn in on itself, and the first thing they have a right to expect of their government is for us to be working for them, looking to deal with the problems, the concerns and the insecurities that they face. And that's, I know, what Kier Starmer will be determined to do.
So you're telling me that he's going to stay the course and try and tough this out, despite him potentially being a drag on the party going forward?
He will stay the course. He's determined to do what he believes he's got a duty to do and was elected to do, which is to lead this Labour government. And those of us around him have a big duty and a responsibility throughout Parliament to help him do that. We can work our way back. We can do that by being bold, by delivering faster on the things that people voted for in the election, and by giving people some hope and security for the future.
I mean, you've lost in large parts to Reform UK. We're going to hear from Nigel Farage later on this morning. If the Labour Party wants to try and keep Nigel Farage out of number 10, isn't it time now to assess how you're doing that? You're losing in the polls, you've lost at these elections, and many would point to the fact that it's the man in number 10 currently who's bringing you down. We seem to have lost Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey. He wasn't just ignoring my question there, he didn't want to answer it. His line seems to have fallen over, but I'm now told by the voices in my head that he is back. Secretary of State, could you hear me? Could you hear my question? I thought you were ignoring me.
No, I'm at home in Rotherham, so perhaps the line's a bit dodgy. Yes, I can hear you. It's clear a lot of people have voted for Reform candidates, and we've seen this before, that Reform have made big promises that they haven't delivered. I mean, look at Worcester, where they were elected promising to cut council tax, and they've hiked it by 9%. It led Farage to turn around and say he wished he hadn't bothered to win in Worcester, and for me that tells you everything about Nigel Farage. He wants to exploit people's problems, not fix them.
Get it. Sorry, Secretary, to interrupt you, but we're short of time because of that little interlude that we had there. The point is, voters have seen how Reform have operated in the councils they control. 10 councils. They promised to cut council tax. They raised council tax everywhere. And yet, across the country, as we've seen this morning, more people are going out to vote for Reform UK. And that's an indictment on you guys as the government, isn't it? That your message hasn't been strong enough to draw those people back, despite them seeing in some places that Reform might not be the best option.
Of course, we've got to do more, and we will. We've got to be bolder. We've got to deliver faster for the changes that people voted for. We've got to give people hope. But I just say, the more that people elect and see Reform councillors and Reform councils, the more they see, as the spotlight has been turned on Nigel Farage, trying to hide a $5 billion secret donation from a crypto billionaire, soft on Russia, flaky on NATO. This is not a man that could be trusted in the long term with national security or leading this country.
OK, you've talked about bold messaging, hope for people. Now, some within the Labour movement and more broadly in the country would like to see this government start thinking about getting closer again to the EU, perhaps even rejoining the EU. You've made noises in that direction. Is that an area that the public, the voting public, should start looking towards Labour for offering that kind of hope that you talk about?
Well, first to say, look, rejoining the EU is out of the question. We were clear about that at the election, but the obvious conclusion that we draw here, and we've seen the way that in this tough world, a combination of hard power, strong alliances, sure diplomacy, and clearly with our economic interests, being able to be closer and working more closely with European nations is part of our security, it's part of our prosperity for the future, and it's part of the steps that the government is now taking.
OK, Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Mr Healey pointed out that we are going to hear from the Prime Minister throughout the next couple of days, but and you got a result for us.
Yeah, that's right. This is Hampshire County Council that has come in and has fallen to no overall control, previously controlled by a Conservative majority of 34. So Tories will be disappointed there. Perhaps a little bit of disappointment for the Liberal Democrats as well, because they had identified 5 councils, Hampshire being one of them, where the party hoped to win overall control. But Hampshire County Council has gone to no overall control.
Yeah, you'll put that to the Liberal Democrats when you speak to them later. And interesting, again, from the Secretary of State for Defence there, that Kier Starmer has no plan to go anywhere, stay the course, and basically the message is that they think that they can tough this out. We'll see in the fullness of time whether that stands up. Now, new polling has shown that young people are disengaged from politics, 20% of them unsure if they should vote when they are eligible. We'll be investigating that with the Children's Commissioner, Emotional Susan next.
So let's return to the local elections. Results continuing to be announced around the country and plenty more to be counted later on today. But let's get a state of play analysis, shall we, with the director of Delta Poll, Joe Twyman. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for chatting to us this morning. So give us your assessment of the night's results so far. Is it fair to say good for Reform, bad for Labour, or is it much more extreme than that?
Yeah, that's certainly a good overall assessment of where we are. It is worth saying that these are the results so far, and so far we've had relatively few results in, and those results that have come in tend to lean more towards the kind of areas that Reform UK would be heading for. But there's no getting away from the fact that the success that Reform have experienced in polling over the last months and indeed years has, at least so far, been replicated in their performance at voting up and down the country. At the same time, Labour, who were expected to do badly, seem to have fulfilled that at least to some degree. Whether they're doing quite as badly as was expected or not remains to be seen, and it really is too early to conclude on that. And then the Conservatives, although they have picked up some wins in places like Westminster and also one in Harlow, they will be disappointed about their overall performance as well. The Greens, probably not too worried at the moment, though many of their target areas will be coming up later.
Indeed, and we'll get a fuller picture then, won't we, at that point, Joe? Morning, it's Kamali here. Have you started to be able to sort of break down the votes? I know we've got quite a high turnout. Are we clear who's been turning out? Young people, old people? What's the turnout like, do we think, at this stage? Do we know?
It's not possible to tell on the types of people who are turning out, but it does appear that turnout is up, at least in the areas that have declared so far, and so that's a positive thing for the health of democracy. Where we do see differences tends to be in areas that were more Brexit leaning, so those areas that are estimated to have voted Leave in larger proportions in the 2016 referendum. Those areas seem to have higher turnout, and they seem to be leaning more towards Reform. But as I say, it is only the early stages now.
And we've talked about a number of different parties, and that tells a story in itself, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of people were kind of talking about these elections as being the moment that we lose two-party politics in this country, and we see this fracturing of politics. Would you say this is a key moment in that transition?
The key question going into these elections was the degree to which the complexity and fragmentation of British politics that we had seen in polling would be replicated in the results. And so far, it certainly seems to be the case. Reform, yes, they're doing well, but they're not doing the kind of numbers in terms of overall vote share that would immediately point to, for instance, a majority at the next general election. Instead, they're doing well, but other parties are still holding on in lots of areas, and so fragmentation up and down the country. Gains, yes, but also losses for Reform, and indeed for the other parties as well. And so a very complicated picture, replicating what we've seen over the last few months.
Complicated indeed, and perhaps because we don't know all the results yet, Joe, still a bit complicated for you to answer my next question. But are you able to extrapolate out and see what this would look like if it were at a general? You say it's a fractured picture. I think that's probably pretty clear now. But, so what does that mean when we get to the general, if it looks like this?
It's really very early to tell, and local elections are unusual in many different ways, not least because some people will vote entirely on national issues, but some people will vote entirely on local issues. The majority of people, of course, will vote somewhere on that scale with a combination of the two. But what this does point to is a difficult position for Labour and a situation where no one party is immediately indicated as on for any kind of working majority. And so a long way to go until the general election, but clearly a situation where we could have a situation where we could have 4, 5, perhaps even 6 parties contesting individual constituencies up and down the country. And that means potentially that every vote could count and the margin of victory could be very small. And we could see, for instance, parties winning on 30, perhaps even 25% of the vote or less. And that means that it's all to play for, and really anything could happen. A week is a long time in politics, and we've got, I think, 170 weeks until the general election needs to be called. So a lot could still change.
Indeed, and a lot could change just in the course of today as well, I guess. Joe Twyman, really interesting to get your analysis on the results in so far. Thanks very much indeed. Well, let's talk to one of the parties we've just been mentioning just there. We can talk to the Greens now because I'm joined by former Green Party co-leader Jonathan Bartley. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks for chatting to us this morning. You happy with the results for the Greens so far?
Yes, looking really good, very hopeful. The best is yet to come. Of course, today is the seats, the results that we're targeting. So I expect to see significant gains. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to surpass our record, which was 250 gains in one election. I'm hopeful that we're going to get past that today, particularly focusing on London, seeing what's going to happen around my patch, Lambeth, but also in Hackney. I think that's going to be quite exciting. And of course, we're already making gains right around the country.
You mentioned London. Let me pick you up on that. As you say, you've got lots of hopes there. You have lost seats on one London council, haven't you, at Richmond upon Thames. Not many of them have declared so far. You didn't pick up seats, you actually lost 5. That must be disappointing.
So net gains around the country, as we've just heard from Joe Twyman of YouGov, you know, things go up, things go down. The net gain is very clear, and I know that's going to go up as we see the results by tea time today.
Yeah, your percentage gains are pretty good, aren't they, so far? But under the first past the post system, you've made relatively few actual gains. Is that frustrating?
I mean, London's going to be interesting, of course. We had 1% of the seats in London in this time 4 years ago. Now we're talking about moving councils to no overall control. So dozens of councillors in London. That's a massive, massive leap that we're expecting to make. It's true that in some places the vote is spread out, other places where we're targeting, we're winning. But I think watch this space because I'm very quietly confident that we're going to see some huge breakthroughs in the capital and right around the country.
Because so far you've made good gains, but Reform are way out ahead in terms of picking up disaffected voters. Is that a worry for you, with Reform doing so well? How much room does that leave for the Greens to pick up votes from people who are frustrated with the status quo?
Well, I'm worried to see Reform doing well. We are the, if you like, the antithesis to Reform and the main challenger increasingly to Reform. Labour, through what they've done over the last 2 years, we've seen them allow an open door for Reform to come in. They've let people down. But we find that people in London and elsewhere are turning to the Greens rather than Reform because they see we have the policies, we see that we care about the cost of living crisis. In Gorton and Denton, we won the by-election and beat Reform there because people recognise that the Greens do have the answer to those people who are crying out for change, who feel left behind, who feel their voices aren't being heard. And the Greens are representing their voice to the government, to wider country at local authority level too. Remember, this is part of 10 years of gains by the Greens. Year on year on year, we've been increasing. So it's not unsurprising to see another great surge this time. When I was leader, we trebled our number of councillors. That momentum has just carried on. So we're not a flash in the pan. You know, you see the Brexit Party, UKIP come and go. Reform, they might be doing very, very well, but have they got the ability to actually deliver for people? I don't see any policy really proposals from Reform. It's very much a protest vote at the moment. With Greens, you know that we've got costed policies, you know we've got policies that we deliver at the local level.
We'll have Reform on later. I'm sure they'll dispute that.
I'm sure they will.
They could reel out policies, I'm sure. But you mentioned that you were leader before. Now Zach Polanski, of course, is leader. He's not had a great week in the last week. His personal polling has dropped, I think, around 14% in the aftermath of the Golders Green attack and the comments he made about the arrest of a suspect. Has that been an issue at all? Could you have done better?
Well, I heard John Curtis refer to that poll, the polling guru, Sir John, and say very clearly that actually there was a 1% difference in the same poll in the overall opinion poll rating, and we should be very careful when we're looking at those kind of stats. I think Zach's been doing a great job. He's certainly had a media onslaught over the last week, but I think he's come through it incredibly well, and I think you'll see that reflected in the results today.
He did have a media onslaught, partly because people were quite uncomfortable about him retweeting these comments about the arrest. Do you think he was right to do that?
I mean, where do you start? There's been a lot that's been thrown at him. I think that, and speaking as a leader, it is incredibly hard, and we do make errors, and it's important that when you do make mistakes, you apologise. I was very pleased to see him, take responsibility, do that. But this is nothing compared to what Labour have done over the appointment of Mandelson, the misjudgment of the Prime Minister, or Nigel Farage's £5 million undeclared donation. I mean, the things that Zach's been doing just pale into insignificance compared to these major issues from these two party leaders.
Nigel Farage, he broke no rules, doesn't he? But Jonathan Bartley, we really appreciate you coming in. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
All right, well, of course, we're going to keep across the local election results as they come in. Interesting to hear from the Greens there. We'll get a real sense of how well they've done when we get those results coming in from London later on.
Absolutely, and we're going to get a reaction from all the political parties throughout the morning, so don't go away.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag, people were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages. The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you enter?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Right, thanks for staying with us. Our continuing coverage of the local elections. We're going to turn to a slightly tangential part of electoral politics now, because a new poll has shown teenagers are disengaged from politics and uncertain about voting in the next general election. Well, let's bring in the Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel D'Souza, who has been responsible for some of this polling. Dame Rachel, always good to speak with you. Thank you so much for making the time. Why don't you just take us through what the young people have said to you in this research?
Absolutely. Yeah, great to be here. Look, I'm in Manchester today launching my last big final survey at my Festival of Children, the big future. And we want all children, we need 1 million children to fill it in. It's going to be the biggest ever, asking what they want from government, what they think about politics, democracy and other things. And while I'm doing that, I'm launching my nationally representative poll. We've polled the children of England. It's a big day. The adults are saying what they'd vote. Well, what did the kids say? First of all, really shocked me. About 50% of children don't know what they're going to vote. And these are the children, 13 to 17-year-olds, who'll be voting in 2029, you know, with this big change to 16-year-olds voting. 50% of them said they weren't sure what they were going to vote, with 11% of those saying they wouldn't vote at all. Most of that 50% saying they just don't know. For the kids who did, it came out pretty much even Stevens. 11% Labour, 9% Reform, 8% to the Greens, and then the Lib Dems and the Tories trailing. But what was shocking was just how little they knew. So today I'm going to be asking the children, and we're going to be going out for months saying, where are you getting your information from? Are you taught about this properly in school? What do you care about? What would make you want to be an engaged citizen? You know, what do you think about the issues of the day? And again, when I asked the children what they cared about, it was, you know, really a big change from 2021. They were worried about war, obviously, worried about cost of living, worried about whether they'd get a good job, and less worried about climate change, more worried about whether they had any friends.
That's so interesting. And where do you think this disengagement comes from? Do you think it's just not discussed enough in school or at home? Or do you think there is a sort of a scepticism about the value of voting already, even in young people?
So two or three things. I mean, I think, first of all, only 1 in 5, and I've talked to 1 million children, only 1 in 5 thought those in power listened to them. We've got to remember this is the lockdown generation that sat there and watched the Prime Minister talk, at his podium every night and never take a question from a child. We need our politicians to be engaging with children, not necessarily doing what they say, but, really listening to them and understanding them. And the kids at the moment do not think the politicians are listening to them. And I think your point there as well, where they're getting their information from. So many of them saying they get their political information off TikTok. So when they had a view, it was someone who'd impressed them on TikTok politically. So I think there is a big job to do to engage properly with this generation, because they're going to have the vote in 2029. That's 4 million new votes. And at the moment, 50% of them are saying, we haven't got a clue.
Yeah, obviously, Dame Rachel, 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in Scotland and Wales at the moment. That law may well come in that 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in England if the law comes in this country.
Yeah.
There are lots of politicians who are on TikTok. Are these young people actually seeing the politicians there as well? What do they make of the kind of content that politicians are putting forward?
Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, a lot of them are saying they like ex-politician because he makes them laugh. It's like, how are they engaging? I don't think it's necessarily about serious engagement. It's more about engagement with personalities. I think we've got a job to do in school to actually be preparing citizens. If we're going to say you can vote at 16, then surely we've got a job to do in schools to really, really kind of, teach kids about their choices, but in a very neutral way. It must be independent. But also, we need to see politicians actually saying they're doing things for children. When children talk to me, they want better healthcare. They're worried about their parents' mortgages. They're worried about food on the table. They're so ambitious. They want great jobs. They're worried about the future. Politicians need to be speaking to them and those in power and using things like schools, visits, the online world to get their message over to them. Otherwise, we're going to have 4 million voters in 2029, new voters, who are like, who are these people? They don't represent me.
Really interesting stuff. Children's Commissioner Dame Rachel D'Souza, always interesting to talk to you, and we'll catch you in a couple of years at the general election. It'll be really interesting to see how young people feel then. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Downing Street. Our political correspondent Lucy McDade is there for us this morning. And Lucy, just give us a sense as to where we are as we come to the end of the first hour of our coverage as to how Downing Street are feeling. We heard from the Defence Secretary John Healey, who told us that Kier Starmer knows that something's gone wrong and is the right person to try and turn it around.
Yeah, and so I understand this morning that the Prime Minister won't be hiding away. He's not looking to duck responsibility for this set of local election results. And in fact, echoing what John Healey, the Defence Secretary, was telling you, Kamali, the Prime Minister believes he has a mandate and will be delivering that until the next general election. That's the message from John Healey. That's the message from sources I've been speaking to this morning, and also other senior Labour figures talking to the media as these results come through. The challenging thing for the Prime Minister is that the day is quite likely to get even more difficult. At the moment, we have a slim snapshot, an England-only picture of these results. We will get elections in Wales, in Scotland. Wales, particularly, Labour is already admitting defeat there, not just to Reform, but to a party on the left, Plaid Cymru. So we are seeing a fractured political landscape. The challenge for the Prime Minister, if he stays on, if he doesn't get ousted by various leadership contenders that may decide to challenge him. The problem for the Prime Minister is deciding how the party moves forward in such a divided political landscape that we are seeing unfold today.
OK, Lucy, for now, on Downing Street, thank you for that. Of course, more from Lucy throughout the day, our continuing coverage of these local elections. Now, let's just bring you some breaking news about that cruise ship, and a third British national has suspected hantavirus and is on the island of Tristan da Cunha in the South Atlantic. 2 other Brits are in hospital in the Netherlands and in South Africa. So that number of British nationals now suspected of having hantavirus gone up to 3.
Yeah, and the number of confirmed cases from the ship, the MV Hondius, has risen to 5. The ship is now on its way to Tenerife. It's expected to arrive on Sunday. And I don't know if you saw the WHO, the World Health Organization briefing yesterday, Kamali, but the message from that was really no need to panic about hantavirus. That was the overriding message. They said that it was an outbreak of a very rare virus on a cruise ship. So far, these cases are small in number, and they say it's definitely not comparable to COVID.
No, that's what they say. It's going to dock, as we say, in Tenerife on Sunday. 3 people, a Dutch couple and a German national, have died as a result of that outbreak on the MV Hondius. We'll keep a very close eye on that. That news, a third Brit has contracted the virus. All right, stay with us here on Mornings. More coverage throughout the day of the local elections in England.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Let's have a look.
Results from local elections in England pour in and a clear picture is emerging.
Reform UK have made big gains, with Nigel Farage claiming an historic change is happening in British politics.
Pretty devastating picture for Labour and the Prime Minister, with significant losses across councils in England. The Defence Secretary tells this programme he has faith in the PM.
The last thing that people would expect is for a Labour Party to turn in on itself, and the first thing they have a right to expect of their government is for us to be working for them.
Also ahead this hour, President Trump says that the ceasefire with Iran is still in place despite there being strikes in the Strait of Hormuz.
And a third British national has suspected hantavirus on the remote island of Tristan da Cunha as the infected cruise ship MV Hondas makes its way to Tenerife.
Hello there, good morning, and thank you for being with us on what could be a seismic day in British politics as the results of elections in England, Wales and Scotland come in, and so far been a pretty bad night for the Labour Party. Overnight we had some of the results of local elections in the councils in England, where counting has been happening through the small hours, with Scotland and Wales due to start their count at around 9 a.m.
But the picture so far is clear. Reform have made huge gains in England, with Labour bearing the brunt of the losses and the Tories suffering as well. Well, the results will undoubtedly pile pressure on the Prime Minister's leadership, so it's going to be a pretty dynamic day ahead.
Yeah, let's just show you how the picture is looking right now. You can see Reform leading, making the most gains, and Labour with all of those losses. But the thing to note at this point, just gone 8 a.m. in the morning, is that it is, as we say, a dynamic picture. Lots of results haven't come in yet. So this picture could well change. Worth mentioning as well, the Conservative Party there in third place. We understand in the last few minutes, the Council of Kensington and Chelsea has been held by the Tories.
Plenty more London councils to be counted through the day. Just a handful have been counted overnight, so we'll get a fuller picture of London's results as the day goes on. In the meantime, though, we've been speaking to the Defence Secretary, John Healey, and asked how much responsibility the Prime Minister must take for the results so far.
He takes a great deal of the responsibility. I know he feels it deeply. I've seen the way that he is preparing to do that. But I would just say to people, look, he's one of only 4 Labour leaders in 120 years that has won an election. He's won a mandate from the public for 5 years, and we're less than 2 years into that. And at this time, with everything going on in the world, rising threats, greater conflict, a oil price crisis looming, the last thing that people would expect is for a Labour Party to turn in on itself, and the first thing they have a right to expect of their government is for us to be working for them, looking to deal with the problems, the concerns and the insecurities that they face. And that's, I know, what Kier Starmer will be determined to do.
So let's get you up to speed then on the story of the night. In Greater Manchester, Labour lost Tameside Council to no overall control, and this is an area it's previously held for 47 years.
Reform UK, changing politics for good, 1,280 votes.
In Basildon in Essex, it was all cheer for Reform as they won the St Martin ward. Sam Janae is Reform's first councillor to be elected today. He spoke to our chief political correspondent, John Craig.
I'm over the moon with what we've done. 11 seats for Reform UK in Basildon is an incredible achievement. The volunteers, the candidates and now councillors done a wonderful job, and we're going to build on this. As the local elections in Basildon are done on a thirds basis, this time next year we're coming back for the other 14 and we will take the administration.
Well, Reform's leader Nigel Farage says the results mark an historic change in British politics, and he says that traditional left and right are now out of the window.
As we've been saying, the vote counting begins in Scotland and Wales at 9 a.m. Polling suggests that Labour will lose its dominance in the Senedd for the first time in more than 100 years.
Well, Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Lucy McDade, who's outside Downing Street for us this morning. So there are going to be some disappointed Labour figures this morning, aren't they? A really bad night for Labour.
Yeah, and look, they rolled the pitch, for a very challenging set of local elections. We've heard already this morning, and I'm sure we'll hear it a number of times from Labour figures today, that mid-term elections are always challenging for a governing party. But while we only have fairly early indicators of the full set of results right now, the party is losing support all over England. When it comes to Wales and Scotland, it looks like they will lose support there as well. For many MPs, what's critical, for many MPs, councillors, Labour members across the country, these elections would be the point at which they would decide Kier Starmer's fate. There have been conversations for some time about just how difficult things have been for the party, Kier Starmer's unpopularity as Labour leader in the polls. This would be the moment at which they would question, they would decide whether or not he could continue as Prime Minister of this country. You know, they've lost councils in parts of the country that have been Labour heartlands. You look at Angela Rayner's territory, Andy Burnham territory, figures in the party who some even want to see take over as Labour leader. Now, I understand that the Prime Minister is going to come out fighting. I understand he won't be ducking responsibility. He won't be hiding away. That echoes what the Defence Secretary John Healey told Sky News, told you, Kamali, this morning, that the Prime Minister believes he has a mandate and he must deliver it. I think what we are getting from Number 10 is this sense that the Prime Minister has been preparing for a bad set of results and so has made plans for over the next few days to set out a new stall, a radical plan for reform. But the question will be, can Kier Starmer do that when a lot of the criticism of this Labour government has been about his leadership and his judgment? So a really challenging day for the Prime Minister, and the problem for him is that I think it's only set to get even worse.
And Lucy, look, so that pressure will be continuing to build. As you say, we're going to potentially hear from the Prime Minister later. What's the sense in Number 10 as to what he will do? The Defence Secretary, John Healey, is pretty clear that he's going to continue and try and fight on. But is that going to be enough?
Losing votes almost everywhere.
Well, I think we will find out over today and over the course of the weekend, because remember, you know, these election results are going to keep coming in. We're not waking up with a full set that we and Labour behind me, people in Downing Street, can really make plans from. They are waiting for the worst to come. We haven't heard yet really much of how the Greens have been doing, for example, another huge threat to the Labour Party. So when it comes to whether the Prime Minister's response will be enough, I mean, you know, Labour MPs have been saying for some time that they're not sure about whether or not he can stay as Prime Minister. The problem is that there isn't one clear successor. That could be what saves Kier Starmer. So I think it really depends on how all of this plays out, how Labour MPs respond. You know, from conversations I've had over the past few days, there are MPs willing to come out and call for Kier Starmer to resign. But actually, so far this morning, the messages that I've been put in, I'm just checking now, have been a bit quiet. And I think that's because people are trying to weigh up what they do next. So I'm sorry to be a political correspondent that can't give you a straight answer to the question, but I think it's because it's such a vague picture this morning. We know that conversations have been taking place. The likes of Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, those names have been swirling Westminster for some time. There are people in the party that want to see a different face in Number 10. Whether or not that happens, I think it depends just how bad the results are for Labour and also who within the party is willing to put their heads above the parapet. John Healey this morning coming out defending Kier Starmer. Whether or not we see more senior Labour figures come out and do that, I think will depend on what happens next.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating day, isn't it? So many more results to come, which we'll, of course, cover here on Sky News. Lucy, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. And let's reflect on the night so far, then. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been going through the numbers.
So we've had over 1,000 seats, 1,133 at the moment, and there is an undisputed winner at the moment. That's Reform UK. They have picked up 353 seats. All of them new. They weren't really contesting the elections the last time this set of seats was held, and a clear loser. Look at this. The Labour Party down 248, only gaining 2. And the Tories also, a difficult night for them, 163. We haven't yet really seen the green surge that has been talked about. That's partly just because the seats what they might in the councils that they might do well in haven't counted yet, and the Liberal Democrats up 51 to 237. Let's look at where this might compare, and you can see that last year the Labour Party lost 66% of the seats it was defending. Now, the figure of how many it has lost this time has bounced around considerably through the night, but currently, actually, it is doing less badly than it did last year, and it is losing 51% of the seats it is contesting. It is held on to about half, 49%. So that might just be a little bit of less bad news, but that figure ebbs and flows depending on what seats and what councils are being counted. Michael Thrasher has a gauge where he projects the number of councils and seats that, or particularly seats, that the Labour Party and Tory Party are going to win or lose. And at the moment, Michael Thrasher, again, this has moved around quite a lot, projects that the Labour Party is on course for a bad night, losing 1,294 seats. So let's look at the equivalent for the Tories, and there they seem to be on course for a much better night than last time, losing 39% of the seats that they're contesting, as opposed to last year, where they lost 68%. And you can see, again, we've got the gauge for the Tories, and they're doing OK, projected to lose 531 seats. Some of those seats last time round were seats where the Tories were doing particularly well because of the vaccine bounce. Now, let's look at some individual councils. This is Newcastle Underline. And this one's significant because this is a reform gain from the Conservatives. We've had a lot of councils that have gone from Labour to no overall control. This is the only one so far where Reform have actually gained it outright. What's the picture? Well, Reform have picked up 27 seats. Where have they picked that up from? Well, some of them from the Tories, 10, and some of them losses from Labour, which is 17. Now, let's look at a particularly notable area of our politics, which is Hartlepool, Peter Mandelson's old stomping ground. It's an area, Labour heartland, that Kier Starmer failed to retake in 2021, nearly resigned as a result. But there's a really clear picture here with Reform picking up all of the seats that were contested. 4 from the Tories, 7 from Labour. But I want to show you the map, which really underscores the change since the last time these wards were contested. Then the more rural areas were all Tory blue, the more inner urban areas were Labour red. Now it's a complete rout in favour of the Reform UK party. And that's the picture all over the place. This is Greater Manchester, Wigan, Lisa Nandy, the glow of Andy Burnham's Greater Manchester Mayoralty. All should be in operation. You can see all red going to all turquoise. Redditch in Worcestershire. Again, you can see the same picture. Red in the north, blue in the south now. Pretty much all turquoise. And you can see how the share of the vote, the percentage of people voting different ways has... And you can see that essentially the Reform UK vote is coming both from the Tories and from Labour. A couple of early London results. Westminster, well, that's going to be a big night for the Tories. They have gained that council outright from Labour. Most of the gains that we saw overnight were to Reform. Actually, in London, Conservative brand still seems to be holding up, taking 9 seats direct off Labour. It's a pretty similar picture in Wandsworth. Let's have a look at that, where Labour have lost that to no overall control. But the picture is the same. Labour lose 7, the Conservatives gain 7. And then one more anomaly, which I think is quite interesting. Richmond, the Liberal Democrats have held that, consolidating, but at the expense of the Greens. Something of a surprise, that. But the Greens have done OK elsewhere. In Oxford, you can see that they have triggered the loss of that council to no overall control, picking up 5 seats at the expense of Labour. Some people think that the Greens could have done a bit better. But overall, I think there's a clear winner and a clear loser. It is for the Labour Party to decide just how bad it is.
Yeah, and just one more result that has come in since Sam was talking. Reform have taken control of Havering from no overall control.
Yeah, interesting at Council Havering, it's East London, of course. Previously, as you can see there, the residents, the Havering Residents Association, the HRA, were leading a minority administration. They had a coalition with the Labour Party in that council. That collapsed in 2024, and as you can see there, they are still the second largest group, the Residents Association in Havering, but it is now Reform UK who will have control of that council, from no overall control to being another gain from reform, havering there in the east of London.
Now then, as we were saying, lots of results are still coming in, lots more results to be counted today. But we're just going to pause for a moment on that story. We'll be back to it very shortly. But we do want to tell you what's going on in Iran, because US Central Command has said it targeted Iranian military facilities after responding to attacks on its Navy ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian news agency said that several explosions were heard near the city of Bandar Abbas and at a pier in Qasem Island. And Iran accused Washington of violating the ceasefire, but the president called the strikes a love tap and said it remains in place.
Whatever that is supposed to mean. Now, our correspondent Sally Lookwood is in the UAE for us in Dubai and joins us now live. Sally, great to have you with us. Look, the last time earlier this week where there was fighting back and forth in the Strait of Hormuz during this ceasefire, missiles and drones were fired at the UAE. What's the situation currently in the Gulf after that exchange of fire overnight?
Yeah, well, the UAE's been attacked again this morning, Kamali, the third time that Iran has fired cruise missiles, ballistic missiles and drones at the UAE in the space of a week. The Ministry of Defence confirming incoming fire once again this morning around 6:30 local time. No reports yet of any damage, and in fact we didn't receive any emergency alerts either, which suggests they weren't near any civilian areas. In fact, I'm hearing reports that it was potentially close to the eastern emirate of Fujairah, but certainly all this comes after a significant exchange of fire overnight in the Strait of Hormuz. Both Iran and the US accusing the other of firing first. Iran reporting civilian areas were targeted in the southern city of Bandar Abbas, which is a coastal city. You can normally get a ferry there in normal times from the UAE, and also on the island of Qasem, which is Iran's biggest island in the Strait of Hormuz. There was also reports of the sound of air defences blasting in the sky in western Tehran. Now, US Central Command came out and said that they were responding in self-defence to unprovoked attacks from Iran against 3 US naval destroyers that were trying to pass the Strait of Hormuz safely, and that they targeted missile launch facilities and military assets, not civilian areas. Now, Iran claims that they managed to cause damage to those US naval vessels. US Central Command says that isn't the case, that no US military assets were hit. Nevertheless, this just underlines how tense the situation is and how volatile the situation is, not just in the Strait of Hormuz, but also here. You know, this is the third time that Iran has targeted the UAE in the last week. Certainly, the UAE is bearing the brunt of Iran's retaliation at the moment, and all of this is coming in the backdrop of diplomatic efforts. Iran said overnight that civilian areas were targeted in coordination with other countries, which is perhaps why the UAE was targeted once again this morning. They've made a number of accusations about UAE involvement in US efforts. So it doesn't feel like the ceasefire is in a great place at all. Nevertheless, we understand Iran is still considering that latest proposal from the US. They are yet to respond. Neither side is willing to acknowledge that this ceasefire is over. Why? Well, the alternative is a return to all-out fighting, that all bets would be off, and no side seems to want that at this stage. So we'll have to wait and see. Technically, diplomatic efforts are still in motion, but it's all happening in the backdrop of an exchange of fire, and it's proving very tense indeed for this region.
Sally, thanks very much indeed. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you throughout the day and the weekend as well. Really interesting time there. Thank you. So let's return to the local elections. As we've been telling you, counting has been going on through the night. So we have a tranche of results to talk about, this time with the Liberal Democrats. I'm joined now by their deputy leader, Daisy Cooper, who's here with me. Hi there, Daisy. Hi. Thanks very much indeed for coming in. Huge number of results still to come in, but how do you feel it's going for the Liberal Democrats?
Really good. We think that we're going to continue our winning streak, and if all goes to plan, then this should be the eighth consecutive set of local elections where we've continued to make gains. So we've had some really good results overnight, but we think the best are yet to come, probably around tea time.
Well, yes, I mean, you say it's been great, but are you really adding the number of seats that you wanted? And isn't your share of the vote a bit disappointing?
Well, look, we have wiped out the Conservatives in Sutton. We've won seats off Labour and Conservatives in Stockport, where we've taken control of the council.
Those are the successes, but overall, is it a bit disappointing?
No, not at all. You don't change communities by winning in the polls or vote share. You change communities by winning in the ballot box. And what we've seen overnight is that we are winning in the ballot box. We are getting more councillors elected, and we're on course to continue our winning streak.
Your leader, Ed Davey, highlighted 5 different councils that he had hopes that the Liberal Democrats could take control over. I think only one of them has counted overnight, and that's Hampshire County Council. You haven't taken control of that, though. It's gone to no overall control. So that was one of your 5 big targets. Is that a disappointment?
Well, look, we've got a fantastic team there. Clearly a little bit disappointing that we didn't quite manage to make it. But as I say, we've got some fantastic wins elsewhere. Look at Portsmouth, for example, where Reform UK threw absolutely everything at that, every single kitchen sink they could find, and we Liberal Democrats were the ones to win it there. So, look, we're winning against all the other political parties, and we've had some great results, but more to come later on this afternoon, East Sussex, West Sussex and Surrey as well. So let's see what comes.
Yeah, but there's, as you say, there's still plenty to come. But so far, we've seen Reform picking up a huge number of votes. We've also seen the Greens doing pretty nicely as well. I mean, where does that leave the Liberal Democrats? Are you worried that you're not the party now for disaffected voters as you might have been in the past?
I think we now occupy a very distinctive space. We are the only political party now that is internationalist, that is pro-business, that believes in fiscal responsibility, and that we are determined to occupy that distinctive political space.
But why aren't people then voting for you in greater numbers now and are turning to Reform and the Greens?
Well, I think what you can see is that people are voting for us. As I say, we've won, we've wiped out the Conservatives in Sutton. We are winning off Labour and the Conservatives in Stockport. We've won 5 seats off the Greens in Richmond. We are running Portsmouth Council. There are lots of examples of where we are winning against all the other political parties, and our best results are still yet to come.
Well, yes, but I mean, this is the midterms. This is a time when traditionally incumbent parties do badly, and this is a time when people do protest, don't they, with their votes, and the Liberal Democrats should be hoovering up. It's not like the old days where the Liberal Democrats really dominated council elections.
As I say, we are doing really well. We are winning. I've given you plenty of examples where we have already won, but our best results are yet to come later today. So let's see where we're at. But we are confident we're going to continue that winning streak, and that's going to put us on course not just to defend our current constituency seats, but to win more at the general election as well.
OK, so I talked earlier about the 5 target councils that Ed Davey was hopeful of the Liberal Democrats taking over. The first one, as we say, a bit of a disappointment, hasn't gone your way. What about the other 4? Are you still hopeful that they will be Liberal Democrat-controlled councils by the end of the day?
We are still hopeful. Obviously, many of these votes haven't even started to be counted yet, but we are hopeful that overall we're going to continue this winning streak and we're going to do well in terms of taking control of these councils.
Is Sir Ed Davey the best man to lead you forward? Do you feel that he's doing enough to really help the Liberal Democrats punch through?
Ed is an economist. He's a former energy minister. He's a carer as well. I can't think of anybody else in British politics who is better placed to deliver for people, planet and profit. He's got a huge amount of experience both in Parliament and outside of Parliament, and I think he's a fantastic leader and he'll lead us into the next election.
OK, well, Daisy Cooper, as we say, only a fraction of the council's votes counted so far. We'll have lots more to talk about as the day goes, but for the moment, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Daisy. We'll talk about what we heard from the Lib Dems in a moment. I just want to bring you a bit of breaking news that we've had come into us. The Prime Minister has been speaking just this morning following what is a bad night for the Labour Party. So Kier Starmer has said that he takes responsibility for Labour's tough local election results, adding that days like this don't weaken his resolve to deliver change that he promised. A similar message to that we heard from the Secretary of Defence Secretary John Healey a little while ago, who said that Kier Starmer will continue in his position despite the results that the Labour government have faced this morning in the England local elections. We still haven't got the results from Wales and Scotland yet. All right, well, let's speak now to Reform UK. Robert Jenrick has joined us. Robert, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good night for you guys.
It's been a really, really good night. Look, I think it's been an historic day, actually, where the old 2 political parties have been completely buried. People have totally rejected them. Because in their own way, they failed. The Tory party said for years they'd deliver secure borders and a strong economy. Actually, it was open season at the border and stagnating wages at home. And the Labour Party came in promising change and has just delivered more of the same. People feel the country is in a mess and they want real change. And we are incredibly honoured that they are investing in Nigel Farage as a strong leader, the team around him, and reform up and down the country, their trust to deliver change, whether that's in town halls or ultimately when the time comes at the next general election.
We'll come on to if you're ready for it in a moment. But Nigel Farage did overnight say that, as you've just echoed, that left and right is gone. What does that mean? So if the left and right dynamic is gone, then what are we seeing here?
We're seeing people coming together who want to fix the country, who sense that the country is slipping away, that we've had 20 years of poor economic growth where people feel hard up at the moment, that they see the wages are stagnating, that crime is out of control, that high streets are being hollowed out, that they want to turn this country around and are coming together knowing that reform is the only way to achieve that. And that means you've got people who have voted Labour their whole lives in somewhere like Wigan coming and joining reform. And equally in rural towns and villages of Essex, you've got people who may well have voted Tory for their whole lives, making the same decision. It's people setting aside party loyalties and the way they may have voted in the past, how their mum and dad voted, you name it, and coming together because they sense that Nigel and reform is the only way that we can actually turn this country around and get it back up and running.
You'll know that the charge of some reform policies is it can be divisive in some areas. There's talk of deporting people. I know that you have talked about having a net emigration policy. Is anything going to be done from Reform and the party to reach across to some of those people who are slightly put off by that idea of deporting people that have been in this country for a long time? I'm not talking about the criminals, I'm not talking about people who have broken the law, but people that have been here for a long time who should be allowed to stay in this country.
Well, we're only talking about people who've broken the law. Look, if you've broken into our country on a small boat or if you've overstayed a visa, you are an illegal migrant in our country. And it's only right that we enforce the laws of this country, and they haven't been properly enforced for years and years and years, and we ask those people to leave. And if they don't, then they will be deported. That's absolutely right. Because at the moment, hard-pressed Brits are seeing other people who shouldn't be in our country living in hotels, living in HMOs on their street, costing billions and billions of pounds. And just on your point about uniting the country, that is what reform will now do.
Right. Because, so you are going to change slightly in the rhetoric?
No. My point is this. You will see over the course of today that reform is the only truly national party, the only party that is able to win in Wales, in Scotland, in the towns and cities of the Midlands and the North, where I grew up and where I represent, rural areas in the east of England, boroughs of London like Havering, where Nigel Farage is this morning. We're the only national party, and that gives us the unique opportunity to bring the country together in a mission to turn it around and improve the lives of people everywhere.
Well, we'll see if that is the case in the future, because you have had control of some councils, haven't you? 10 councils, promises made in those councils to cut council tax, for instance. Every one of those councils put council tax up.
Well, look, people obviously like what they see reform councils are doing, because millions more people have voted to have a piece of it.
This morning, isn't it? Because despite the promise being made and promise not kept, you've managed to put people on. What do you put that down to?
Well, firstly, that's not great. Let's look at what actually has happened over the course of the first year of reform running councils. On average, reform councils have lower council tax than their Conservative or Labour equivalents. And so in just 12 months of running these councils, reform councillors have found efficiency savings, cut out some of the waste that exists, and everyone can see it when they look at local councils, as they do with national government too, and been able to deliver lower council tax, because we care about working people. We know how hard-pressed they are at the moment, and we want to bring down their bills.
Let's be absolutely clear.
Just to finish the point, it's obvious that reform would not be doing so well as we are right now if many, many millions of people across the country didn't look at those councils, think they're doing a good job, and want that in their own area too.
It is the case, though, that those councils did put up council tax, correct?
But less than their Labour or Conservative equivalents.
They did put them up. They did put them up. And that is fascinating that we find ourselves in this point where that promise has been made, maybe not kept, you say, less than other places.
Well, we never promised to bring down council tax. We said we would deliver lower taxes.
Freeze
that is exactly what we're doing. by 1 percentage point on average across the country. So if you want lower council tax, vote Reform, and that is what many millions of people have done.
And in Staffordshire, how many leaders have you gone through? It's been 4 different leaders. You've got an 18-year-old in charge of Warwickshire, and yet still.
Well, if you're good enough, you're old enough. There's nothing wrong with someone being young and dynamic running a council.
No, I'm fine with that. What about the 4 leaders that you've lost in Staffordshire that...
Well, look, people come and go, and, we may be about to have a different Prime Minister of our country. So, that's... But Reform's performance in councils has been good. That's why people are giving us this vote of confidence.
We'll see if that maintains. Isn't this just a protest vote? You know what happens in these midterm elections, as some like to call them now, these local elections. It's a chance to give the governing party a bit of a kicking. You're a protest party, and this won't be replicated.
No, I don't believe that's the case. I think something very, very historic is happening, which we haven't actually seen in our country since the first half of the 20th century, when the old Liberal Party got washed away and the Labour Party came into force. What you're seeing at the general election, and then followed by these 2 sets of local elections last year and this year, is a new force emerging, a truly national party, which is going to go on to win the next general election.
We'll see what the numbers turn out to be in a couple of days' time, but there's definitely going to be a sense of fracturing, right? Would you say that there's going to be more parties available, which could actually be challenging for Reform, couldn't it, going forward? Because what you might end up with is sort of a progressive block of parties that look to try and stop you guys.
Well, it doesn't look as if that's had any effect. If that exists, that factor, it doesn't look as if it's having any effect at the moment, because Reform is having such good results in all parts of the country. And it seems to have this unique ability to attract people from the left and the right. So the traditional ways of characterising Reform are just not right.
Just got some news as well about Reform. Break it to you so you can react to this. The Conservatives, as we can see there, have just held Bexley. It was predicted that Reform may well take that. So while a good picture across the country, not in all places, what do you put this down to, across the situation in Bexley?
Well, look, I think the Tory party is basically dead, but it's going to survive in small pockets of great affluence, mainly in central and parts of outer London. That's what I said when I left the Tory party and came over to Reform. But that means it's kind of a regional pressure group. It's not a truly national party. It's a party that may have, MPs in Kensington and Westminster, but not in Wolverhampton and Newark. And that is no platform to win the next general election. It's very clear that if you want to get rid of Labour at the next general election, the only viable route is to rally behind Nigel Farage, a strong leader, and his team, and Reform.
You've come over, as well as come over, others have come over to the party. That talk of you taking over the Conservative Party, is that gone now? There's not in your...
Well, for me... No, that ship has sailed, I can assure you.
Reform to completely... You said that they're just going to be a regional party, the Conservative
Yeah, the Conservative Party is finished. The Conservative Party is finished. And look, you can see how bad these results are for the Tory party. If you look back at all the times the Tory party has been in opposition in the last 50 years, go back to 1975, every time the Tory party has gained seats, hundreds, sometimes thousands of seats. Even William Hague was gaining hundreds of seats when he was in opposition, and Tony Blair was the Prime Minister. At the last set of local elections, the Tory party lost hundreds of seats. It looks like the Tory party will lose hundreds of seats this time. So the Tory party is slipping away. Yeah, it may exist in a couple of boroughs in London, very, very wealthy, affluent places, but it's not going to exist in the rest of the country.
Left-right paradigm has gone in your opinion at the moment. How would you describe yourself then? Are you a populist? What's the definition? What's the term to use for Reform?
I don't use that phrase, but neither am I ashamed of being in a party which is taking up the actual concerns. Because it's used as a term of, disparagement. But there's nothing wrong with taking up the concerns of people in this country. The reality is, for 25 years, we've been very badly governed by both Labour and Conservative, and I was part of one of those governments, don't get me wrong. I've seen it up close, how it failed. It left people feeling poor, our country's economy weakened, open borders, crime, hollowed out high streets, public services that are poor, despite people paying ever more in taxes. People want real change, and that is what Reform offers. It's not about left or right, it's not about the old politics, it's about a unique opportunity, probably the first opportunity that I've known in my adult lifetime, to actually get a government that can come in and turn this thing around.
Sorry to get so philosophical about you, but you avoided the populist term, because you'll know that populists across the world, generally, on average, they actually damage economies. They reduce GDP, and 10% recent research has found that. So I am trying to work out. You call yourself a national party.
But do you know what's happened to our economy in the last 25 years?
Of course,
it's gone nowhere.
And as you rightly point out, you were part of that.
It's gone nowhere,
right?
So the parties that you support
My support?
Well, you're disparaging
I'm not
reform.
disparaging
The old traditional parties that it sounds like you support, they went nowhere. They went nowhere.
You used to support them. You used to support the old party as well. You were
of course,
part
that's
of
why I accept
No.
that party failed.
Right.
I'm one of the people who said it failed. That's why I resigned from it.
Yourselves, national parties. That the term
we are a national party that wants to represent everyone in this country, who wants to come together and turn it around. We want to deliver higher wages, lower bills, lower crime, get pride back into our country and secure our borders and end the farce that we've seen now for far too long of the small boats.
Robert Jenrick, always good to speak with you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to you.
Well, let's just show you the current state of the parties after overnight counting, and to remind you once again that only a fraction of the total number of votes have been counted so far. There's a huge number that will be counted through the day today and more results to come. But the state of play, as you can see it there, Labour and the Tories losing out and Reform really reaping the benefits of their losses.
All right, just want to bring you a line of breaking news now. It's concerning the boss of South East Water.
Yeah, that's right. The chief executive of South East Water has announced plans to step down. Now, this comes just a week after the group's chairman also quit in the wake of major supply outages in both Kent and Sussex. South East Water have said that David Hinton, who joined the group's board back in 2013, would stay in the post to allow an orderly transition over the summer while the group hunts for his successor, but that he is on his way out. And as I say, this comes after the chairman of South East Water resigned last week after a really scathing report. We talked about it a bit on this show, didn't we, Kamali, from MPs who said they had no confidence in the company's leadership. And those bosses were questioned by MPs on the DEFRA, on the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, about their responses, and clearly they weren't satisfied with the answers.
They were not. Hinton saying he decided to step down because he felt his position was increasingly becoming a distraction from the priorities of South East Water. We'll get more detail on that decision and the changes in that company throughout the morning here on Mornings on Sky News. But let's take you now to the Canary Islands, where we've got news on that cruise ship where there's been an outbreak of Hunter virus. A third Brit has now been found to have suspected to have that virus. They are currently on an island in the South Atlantic, Tristan da Cunha. Now, the number of confirmed cases on the MV Hondius has risen to 5. The ship is on its way to Tenerife. Health officials say it's not the beginning, though, of another pandemic. Well, let's take a closer look at how the virus... My apologies. Let's bring in our correspondent, Sadia Chowdhury, who, as promised, is on the Canary Islands for us. So, Sadia, that confirmation now of a third suspected case. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Kamali. I think two things are happening at the same time. One is that we're getting more information about how this transfer of passengers and crew will happen. The other is that we're finding out more cases, that case that you mentioned there, the third confirmed British case, which was confirmed just this morning. And I think both of those things are keeping things on a very tight balance. So if I go through the first one, getting more information about how all of this is going to work. Yesterday we had some updates from the Spanish authorities. This morning from the UK authorities, who have outlined a few more things about how things are going to happen. They said UK government staff will be on the ground, and anyone, passengers or crew, not showing symptoms will be escorted to the airport for free passage on a dedicated repatriation flight. This flight, they say, will operate under strict infection control measures with public health and infectious disease specialists from on board to monitor the passengers, and that is according to the UK HSA. All British passengers and crews will be asked to isolate for 45 days upon returning to the UK. The other thing that we're finding out more about is the number of cases, and I think that's the one that people here locally, at least, are watching very, very closely, because there are still a good few hours and days to go until this ship arrives. We expect it to be Sunday, but that could also change, and we're still only on Friday. And there was a lot of nervousness when we spoke to people here on the island of Tenerife about this ship arriving here yesterday. And I think as those numbers change, if they go up, there'll be more people nervous. The other challenge for the Spanish authorities is not just this operation, which begins on Sunday and, of course, could take many days, if not weeks, to happen, but also just in that lead up to it, to the port workers who have expressed their opposition to this, and initially they said that they were really angry about the lack of information, and as more information came about, they said they still don't really fully trust all of it. And they pointed to the COVID pandemic and said that, you know, at that time we were told there'd be no more than 1 or 2 cases of COVID in the whole of Spain, and then look where we ended up after that. And so I think there's a little bit of distrust as well. So a really big challenge for the Spanish authorities coming up. But they say they're in advanced talks with many nations, including the US and the UK, in getting that sort of repatriation done very quickly.
Sadia, it's really interesting that you brought up the COVID virus, because the WHO yesterday really keen to try to calm down people, weren't they, and saying it's not like another coronavirus, and you know, really trying to say this is not a time to panic.
Yeah, that was the message from a lot of health experts, that this isn't like the COVID pandemic because simply because of the way it transmits. They said that, you know, whereas COVID was more easily transferable from human to human, although this strain of hantavirus that has been identified is one that transfers from human to human, it is very rare and it requires prolonged close contact with someone who is infected. So from the health authorities, a lot of, you know, messages of staying calm and not treating this like the start of a pandemic. But on the ground, and when we've spoken to people, this is what they're talking about, because what they're seeing from other countries, South Africa, Singapore as well, in the UK, and places where there's an advice for people to self-isolate, sometimes up to around 6 weeks. And we know that the Spanish government has also announced that it's drawing up these sort of plans of how to legally enforce those kind of measures. And I think that is bringing up a lot of nervousness for people around here. Remember, Tenerife relies on tourism, so any sort of hint of anything going into lockdown or anything, sort of rules or measures being imposed on businesses here, or, you know, hotels and places like that, I think make people really, really nervous.
OK, Sadia, for now, in Tenerife, thank you for that. More, of course, from Sadia and the team throughout the day to keep an eye on that outbreak of hantavirus. But these are live pictures from Havering in East London, where we are expecting leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, to speak very soon.
There he is, in the centre of your screen, making his way towards the microphones to give his verdict on how Reform have done so far overnight.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. I am delighted to be here in the sunshine outside Havering Town Hall, which I can now say is under new management. And I'm absolutely... And it's significant. It's our first win of a borough in London. And that, in some ways, goes against the trend, because the pattern that's emerging over the country is that Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas. And what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands like Essex. So London goes a bit against the trend in that the Conservatives and Labour have held up in some of the other boroughs. But I think overall what's happened is a truly historic shift in British politics. We've been so used to thinking about politics in terms of left and right, and yet what Reform are able to do is to win in areas that have always been Conservative, but equally we're proving in a big way we can win in areas that Labour have dominated, frankly, since the end of World War I. At the moment, we're winning 1 in 3 of all the seats that are up, but I genuinely think the best is yet to come. I'm very excited about the North East results, the Yorkshire results, some more to come in the West Midlands. Essex, we're feeling supremely confident, and that's significant given that half the Cheddar Cabinet have seats in Essex. So it's a big, big day. It's a big, big day, not just for our party, but for a complete reshaping of British politics in every way. And it all goes to show that over the course of the last 2 years, since we made that breakthrough in the general election, we have professionalised the party. We've done it at a very, very rapid rate. I'm thrilled and delighted and happy to take any questions.
Nigel, you like on Good Morning Britain. The counting process so far, there's a lot still to come.
Yes.
You've clearly made a lot of gains, you're clearly doing very well. How well do you think you'll do by the end of the day?
The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I'm very excited about the prospects for us in Sunderland, in Barnsley, in Calderdale, in Wakefield, Cannock Chase, areas like that. And by the way, we took Newcastle-under-Lyme from the Conservatives, but there are going to be some big Labour wins. And perhaps in historic terms, Wales is the biggest of all. Labour have not lost an election in Wales since 1922. I couldn't tell you whether Plaid will be first or we're going to be first, but what I can tell you is it's going to be a tight race between the two. So Wales, historically significant.
Nigel, live on Good Morning Britain. A lot of sentiment there. What about specifics, though? What do you actually need to do for communities, councils up and down the country?
Well, we've got a track record now. Where we have majority control of the 10 councils we won on May the 1st last year, 1 year in, we can say, hand on heart, we've already saved over £300 million, and we've kept our council tax rises lower than any of the other parties running comparable counties. And if you doubt me, the IFS actually yesterday backed that up. So we are delivering value for money. What we're going to do here is, whilst many of these are new to politics, we've also got some old lags. Sorry, Keir. Well, you weren't the council leader, So we've also got some experience of how to run this place, and we're very excited about the prospects. By the way, no one's got a magic wand. We all know that finances of local councils all over the country are severely stretched, and we're not promising miracles, but we are promising good value for money.
Do you recognise that this might be a protest vote, though, against Labour and Kier Starmer, and that's why people are coming to reform? When it comes to the general election, the results might look very different.
Well, have a look at last year. Last year we far exceeded expectations in the counties that were fought. It can't continue to be a fluke or a protest vote. I would honestly say you're witnessing an historic shift in British politics. This is now the most national of all parties. We're competitive in the north of Scotland. We were competitive in Cornwall in the county elections last year. We're competitive in every part of the country, and we're here to stay.
You talked about some difficult questions on funding for local councils. You've had some difficult questions about your own funding, £5 million.
Yeah. We'll talk about that any other time you like. Go on.
Nigel, we've heard claimed before that the old two-party system is dead. What makes this time different, and how confident are you, based on these results, that you're heading for number 10?
Well, look, I think, apart from London, as I say, there are some London boroughs in which Labour have held up well overnight. The Conservatives have won back Westminster, although failed to do so in Wandsworth. There is still some residual strength. Both the Labour and Conservative parties would view London as their stronghold. But if you go to Merseyside, you go to Greater Manchester, just have a look overnight at what we've achieved already in results. In Greater Manchester, Tameside being an example, we won all the seats that were up overnight. And one of the big ones I'm looking forward to on Merseyside is St Helens, later on today, where all 46 seats are up. Now, these are areas, Boris Johnson did well in 2019 in the Red Wall, but what you're going to see today from us goes way further than that. And I think what you're seeing is voters who aren't just coming to us for a one-off, they're now becoming reformers in every way. So I am convinced that it's a fundamental change. I said yesterday that this set of elections was like our Beecher's Brook. You've got to clear Beecher's Brook, you've got to land safely if you're going to go on and win the Grand National. And these are the most significant set of elections between now and the general election, and I think we're in a very good place. And our lead, if you look at our lead over the other parties, it's consistently about 9.5%.
So we're just going to leave Nigel Farage there, hailing what he described as a truly historic shift in British politics as he talked about the wins that reform has enjoyed overnight. But now we're going to take you to the Prime Minister, Kier Starmer.
Let me be clear, these are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who've put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. May was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
They want to change you.
Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that. and to plunge the country into chaos.
Did you contemplate that the problem might be you, that you might need to go to help Labour win these seats back? Did you even contemplate it? Do you acknowledge it as a conversation even?
Look, I think it's absolutely clear that the electorate are fed up with the fact that their lives aren't changing quickly enough. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. I think that we were right to emphasise to the country the difficult inheritance we had, the challenges we face, but we haven't done enough to convince people that things can improve, their lives can get better, the hope. And I'm not going to walk away from that challenge. We made a number of calls which were the right calls in terms of stabilising the economy, investing in our public services and not getting dragged into the Iran war. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. And my job now is to set out the steps that we will take to bring about the change that people want and deserve.
PM, to be clear, you are not going to resign?
No, I'm not going to walk away and plunge the country into chaos. We were elected to deal with these challenges, and that's what we will do.
Has Ed Miliband asked you to set out a timetable for your departure?
Well, I think Ed Miliband has dealt with this and made absolutely clear that he supports me.
What do you say to those in your party that are really upset with you, they don't think you're getting it, and they're calling for your resignation? What do you say to would-be challengers and the party? What's your message?
Well, I think it's very important that we don't sugarcoat these results, so I'm not going to do that. They are tough results, I accept that. They reflect voters who don't feel that their lives have changed enough or quickly enough, and that's been going on for a long time. We were elected to deal with that, and I'm not going to walk away from that responsibility and plunge the country into chaos.
I've got a final question. One of your own top team messaged me this morning and said that you are the reason that Labour risks handing the country to reform, that you are the problem. What do you say to that? That if you stay on, you will hand the country to reform?
What I'd say to that is we won a landslide victory in July 2024. I led our party to that victory. That is a 5-year mandate to change the country. Yes, there are difficult conditions. The inheritance was terrible. The international context is very, very difficult. But we need to inject that hope and convince people that things can and will get better. And that's why in coming days I'll set out the further steps that we will take.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling upset today?
I am feeling very much for the brilliant candidates, the brilliant councillors, the brilliant representatives that we have lost, because I know for them they have put so much into their communities, so much of their life into public service. And so I'm thinking about them and thinking about what we need to do to rebuild and to take our country forward.
Are you going to stand as Prime Minister at the next general election?
Yes. It was a 5-year term I was elected to do. I intend to see that through.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Well, I am pleased to say that Beth joins us now live. Beth, final question, then 3 more. Love the work. And one of your questions there towards the end is the same one that I asked to John Healey about this idea of it being Kier Starmer that's a drag on the party. He answered it in the way that you'd probably expect, with platitudes. What did you make, looking in the man's eyes this morning, as to whether he gets what's happening?
Look, I think there's a couple of things to say in that interview, about that interview with Kier Starmer. The first thing is he's sending a clear message to his party: I am not walking away. I asked him repeatedly whether he thought he was the problem, had he contemplated resigning, and he kept saying, I am not walking away. It will plunge the country into chaos. So that is his message to his party, to would-be challengers, to those that might today call for his resignation. I think there was another element there from Kier Starmer where he said he acknowledged that the country had not seen the change that Labour promised. He said we haven't done enough to give people hope and to prove that things that can get better. And then he said you're going to hear more in the coming days. And we are going to hear more, because as I understand it, he will be making a speech in the coming days, and he's going to try and get that message across, try and inject some optimism into what has been a pretty depressing Labour government that has disappointed the public. We're seeing that in the polling, and now we're seeing it in real time as the first big ballot box verdict on Kier Starmer's government comes in. I think the question you're asking, though, about does he really get it, and that was what I was trying to get to, does he really get how upset people are? I don't know whether Labour MPs and activists watching that will think he really gets it and he understands and he hears that he really is the drag anchor at the moment on Labour. And I think what you saw there, he said, I asked him, are you feeling upset? He said, I'm feeling for the candidates that have lost their seats. And my goodness, it's going to be such a difficult day for Labour. As it looks on the trajectory they're going on, they could lose over 1,500 councillors once these results come in. That is a body blow. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be rough. People are going to be very upset. And he is going to have a battle on his hands. But I think what he said this morning, John Healey, the Defence Secretary, coming out to back him, this is the fight back from a number 10 that knows the Prime Minister's really in trouble. My final thought is it might be a stay of execution this weekend for Kier Starmer, but that question about is his leadership going to hand the country to reform? That's what his Labour MPs and party are worried about. And that question is not going to go away today. It's going to get louder and louder and louder as the day goes on.
Beth, thanks very much indeed. I think you're going to join us again just after 9 o'clock, and we can chat to you a little bit more about what the Prime Minister has said and your take on the results so far. For the moment, though, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Beth.
And yeah, really interesting to see at the end of today, when there's so many more votes to count, not only from English councils, but also all those votes to count in Wales and Scotland, how much pressure there'll then be on Keir Starmer. He's made it absolutely clear, as Beth was saying, that he doesn't want to walk away. He said that several times, didn't he? But the question is whether anyone will challenge him.
Yeah, there's only been that one MP in the hours after the results have started coming in, Hartlepool, who said that he should step down. I wonder whether that will gain momentum as we see the results, as you say, coming from Wales and Scotland. The Prime Minister is going to continue to stay and fight. We'll see what the next few days have to bring.
More in the next hour, though, so don't go away.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Hello and a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Breaking news, Sir Kier Starmer says he takes responsibility and the voters have sent a message after local council elections in England deliver a bloody nose for Labour.
These are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives.
Reform UK make big gains, with Nigel Farage claiming an historic change in British politics is underway.
It's a big, big day, not just for our party, but for a complete reshaping of British politics.
Also today, President Trump says the ceasefire with Iran is still in place despite strikes in the Strait of Hormuz.
And a third Brit has suspected hantavirus on the remote island of Tristan da Cunha as the infected cruise ship, the MV Hondas, makes its way to Tenerife.
Hello, very good morning and welcome to the programme. So, Sir Kier Starmer says he takes full responsibility for Labour's tough election results in England. The Prime Minister has been reacting after a dismal night for his party. So we've had some results of local council elections in England where counting has been happening through the night. And meanwhile, Scotland and Wales are due to start counting around now.
Yeah, it's just getting underway there. Now, the picture so far is pretty clear. Reform have made huge gains in England, with Labour bearing the brunt of the losses to Reform UK and the Conservative Party suffering too. Now, the results will undoubtedly pile the pressure back on the Prime Minister's leadership as we look at those results that are due to come in later on today. Now, as you say, Reform way out ahead, making the majority of the gains at the moment. The Labour Party suffering what looks to be quite a bad performance in these elections. Our election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher, saying to me earlier that this isn't just mid-term blues for the Labour Party. This looks like this is an existential crisis for them going forward.
Well, our political editor, Beth Rigby, is in Ealing in West London. She's been speaking to the Prime Minister and she joins us now. So, Beth, a bad night for Labour. How did Kier Starmer react to that?
Anna, a very, very bad night for Labour, and it's only going to get worse as the results come in today. Labour could lose, on the trajectory we're seeing at the moment, maybe 1,500 councillors. That would be about 40% of the seats they're contesting. Oh, sorry, about 60% of the seats they're contesting. A terrible result for them. They could lose control of the Senedd in Wales that they have held. It has been red since devolution nearly 3 decades ago. I cannot overstate what a horrible, disastrous set of election results this is, and therefore the question clearly is Kier Starmer the right person to lead the Labour Party? And that is what everyone has been talking about for a number of weeks, and that is the question today. I asked him repeatedly about whether or not he thought that the change had to be him standing down. Was he going to resign? What was his message to those Labour MPs that think a better path for them would be to change the leader? He kept saying, I am not walking away and I won't plunge the country into chaos. So that was his message today, but he acknowledged that the party hadn't done well enough. He acknowledged that the results were tough. He said, I'm not sugarcoating it. It's painful for those councillors. But let's have a listen to what he said today.
Let me be clear, these are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. I was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
A message that they want to change you.
Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that and to plunge the country into chaos.
And Beth, look, those kind of questions, that sort of tone of questioning about whether or not he is a drag on the party, you've asked him before in the lead up to these elections. We knew they were going to be pretty bad. What did you make of the way he responded to you this time, the morning after, as we're going through the midst of what looks like a really, really bad night for the party?
Well, look, it's difficult for him, clearly. I mean, can you imagine someone repeatedly asking you whether you're the problem, should you resign? I mean, that is uncomfortable, and I think he was uncomfortable. And I also think he doesn't particularly want to engage in it because he doesn't want to acknowledge, perhaps, the precariousness of the predicament he's in. But look, Number 10 have known for many weeks now that this is a really, really difficult moment for the Prime Minister. And they have planned it and they have prepared a fight back. And he came here today clearly with a line to give to his party. I am fighting on. I don't want to plunge the country into chaos, as he puts it. And he's sending out a message that if you want to take me out, you've got to come and get me. So you've got a defiant Prime Minister. I think what we're going to see in the next few days is he's going to come out, and he said it himself, talk about the next steps of delivering that change more quickly for the country. He's going to set out his legislative agenda for the country, for the government, for Parliament next Wednesday at the King's speech. And he will try and use this as a moment to try and reassert his leadership. But I think the real question here is it too far gone? And I think part of what he needs to do now and in the coming days is sort of speak to his MPs and say, I hear you. And I wonder with that Paul clip, with that interview I did on behalf of all the broadcasters, you know, when I say to him, your party are really upset with you, your MPs think you should go, he's not really engaging in the emotion that they're feeling. Rather, he's saying, I'm fighting on. And I wonder whether that will help him when they sort of see how he's responding. But I think what he did do in that address to activists, certainly, was he acknowledged it was tough. He said, I'm not sugarcoating it. He didn't try to downplay it. He didn't just say, oh, it's normal midterms. He said, I get it. We haven't done well enough, and I'm going to change that. And what he's really asking the party for is give me some more time. Because actually, when you speak to people around him, what they would say is, although this is going to be an awful set of results, the general election is some time away. So what he's got to do in the next few weeks is persuade the party just to stick with him, and then he needs to try and deliver change to get to the point where the country might look at him again. But I think that last question, which is, are you going to stand in the next general election? He said, yes, I am. I have a mandate. I'm not sure that his party want him to. Whenever I talk to anyone, there is a kind of settled view in the party that Kier Starmer's unpopularity and the mistakes of the past couple of years mean that it's too far gone for him to win the public back over, and therefore will they try to change leaders? So I think there's still this very live question for him about whether he can hang on and for how long. And however much he might want to wish it away, unless the polls improve, unless voters change their mind on him and his government, those questions are going to remain, and actually they're just going to get louder.
Yeah, Beth, I'm sure you're right. And certainly some of those questions will be asked throughout the day today as those other results come in. Beth, thanks very much indeed for the moment. Thank you. Well, as mentioned, Nigel Farage's Reform UK made big gains across the country, and he's called the results an historic shift in British politics. Here he is a little bit earlier.
I am delighted to be here in the sunshine outside Havering Town Hall, which I can now say is under new management. And it's significant. It's our first win of a borough in London, and that in some ways goes against the trend, because the pattern that's emerging over the country is that Labour are being wiped out by reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands like Essex. So London goes a bit against the trend in that the Conservatives and Labour have held up in some of the other boroughs. But I think overall what's happened is a truly historic shift in British politics. We've been so used to thinking about politics in terms of left and right, and yet what Reform are able to do is to win in areas that have always been conservative, but equally, we're proving in a big way we can win in areas that Labour have dominated, frankly, since the end of World War I. At the moment, we're winning 1 in 3 of all the seats that are up, but I genuinely think the best is yet to come. I'm very excited about the North East results, the Yorkshire results, some more to come in the West Midlands. Essex, we're feeling supremely confident, and that's significant given that half the Cheddar Cabinet have seats in Essex. So it's a big, big day. It's a big, big day, not just for our party, but for a complete reshaping of British politics in every way. And it all goes to show that over the course of the last 2 years, since we made that breakthrough in the general election, we have professionalised the party. We've done it at a very, very rapid rate.
Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, speaking earlier. Let's get the analysis now of what we know so far from all the votes that have come in. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
Counting overnight is pretty much done, so it's a good moment to reflect on what we can see. 1,200 or so seats counted out of the 5,000 or so, and there's a clear winner. Here they are. It's Reform UK. They've got 391 seats. They didn't contest any of these seats last time they were up, so they haven't lost any. This is the first time they have been in contention for any of them. There's a clear loser as well. That's the Labour Party. You can see that overnight they have lost 257 seats. Tories also losers, not that far behind. It's been getting worse for the Tories, 192. Some gains for the Greens, but I think we haven't seen the seats and the councils that might provide a bit of a Green surge out yet. And the Liberal Democrats doing slightly better than that. The question is, it's bad for Labour, but how bad? Now, one of the ways that we can calculate that is by taking wards across the country, imagining that the whole of the country is going to the vote, and then working out the percentages for the vote projection. And here you have Michael Thrasher's early first projection based on about 1,000 of the votes. And it tells you that they put Reform UK on 31% of the vote, the Tories on 19%, Labour on 15%, Lib Dems on 14 and the Greens on 13. So just to put that all in a bit of context, that Reform doing a little bit better than the opinion polls suggest at the moment, and Labour dropping into third place, with perhaps the Greens doing less well than they do in the opinion polls. But if you stand back and compare this year, these results this morning, with last year, you can see that Reform basically doing pretty much as they did last year, and the Tories just edging up a tiny bit, Labour down a tiny bit, but it was a disaster for both of those parties last year, so not really anything to cheer about for anybody. Now, let's look at the councils that changed hands. Not many of them did, but there were a handful. Most of them went into no overall control, but this one, Newcastle under Lyme, actually went from Conservative to Reform. And you can see the picture here. Reform here getting a stonking 27 seats. And that, in this council, is at the expense both of Labour, they lost 17, and of the Conservatives that lost 10. Now let's look at a Tory victory, because there were the odd glimmer of hope for the Tories. They managed to gain Westminster from Labour control, and they got it to full Conservative control. And you can see the straight swap, -9 Labour, +9 Tories. And the thing about this, the reason I've picked this seat is it's quite interesting that, bluntly, the Conservative brand in London doesn't seem to be quite as bad, maybe as it is elsewhere in the country. The metropolis, they seem to be holding up. But let's look at the picture across large swathes of England outside London, and in particular, the Red Wall. I want you to look at this. This is Hartlepool, one of the most famous places in our politics. You know, former stomping ground of Peter Mandelson. Kier Starmer nearly resigned when he didn't win a by-election here. And again, the picture, unambiguous. Reform are the winners. They won 12 seats. That's at the expense of 4 seats from the Tories and 7 seats from Labour. But I think when you look at it visually, actually, you get a rather more stark picture. Let's look at the last time those wards were up compared to now. And you can see the blue in the more rural areas, the red. But this time it's a rout, a Reform rout. They get everything. Let's look at another area This is Wigan in Greater Manchester. You should have the Andy Burnham halo effect. Lisa Nandy is the local MP. You have Angela Rayner not that far away. In 2023, it was almost all red. What is it again? Well, it's a reform route in the whole area. Then there's Redditch in Worcestershire. Look at this. Again, healthy. You've got Labour and the Conservatives, two parties holding up, and now a reform route. And you can see how the vote here in Redditch has changed. You've got 37% of the vote going to Reform UK, and that is just at the expense of the Tories and there of Labour. And you can look at how that has changed over time. That gives you a sense of history, right? If you start over here in 1973, you can see that the two parties have been jostling for the Redditch Council all the way back, but this time, for the first time, Reform UK have done very well and managed to upset the trend. Right, just a couple of interesting councils I want to draw your attention to quickly. This is Richmond. Now, it's a West London council, affluent. Lib Dems hold on to it. Not much movement, but what the movement that there is pretty interesting. Look, Lib Dems are up 6 at the expense of the Greens that are down 5. Bit surprised. Narrative was meant to be that the Greens were going to do particularly well in London, and yet they don't seem to be doing well in Richmond. Lib Dem sources put that down to some of the recent difficulties Zach Polanski has been having. Look at this in Oxford. Now, this is a council that has changed hands. Labour lost it to no overall control, and Labour lost 5 and the Greens gained 5. But I just wonder whether or not the Greens, in a prominent university town, might have wanted to pick up slightly more than that. Now, it's early days with these elections. 1,000 out of 5,000 or so seats have been counted. There's much more to come, and that's before Scotland and Wales. But I think the biggest challenge right now is for Labour, the governing party. Those results do not look good.
And Sam, look, we've got those results for now in England, as you say. It's going to be fascinating. We'll see what happens in Wales and Scotland. What's your sense of where we are at this point?
Well, in a sense, our verdict and the sort of results matter only up to a certain point, because the judge, jury and executioner of any Labour Prime Minister, Labour MPs, just as it was for the Tories with Tory MPs. And I've been getting messages in overnight, and MPs who are sure that there wasn't going to be a challenge say that the emotional damage the emotions they feel as a result of the damage to the infrastructure of their party is far worse than they were expected. They do not like the line to take from the Prime Minister and the party, blaming councils and not Downing Street. And they didn't like what they saw just now, the robotic, in their view, approach of the Prime Minister that says he understands what's happened, but doesn't necessarily look like he does or is prepared to change anything like as much as they should. So I think there are a lot of questions, but if Kier Starmer misjudges the mood over the next few days, that could be really, really difficult. And so far, he's not getting great reviews from his MPs.
No, he's not.
No.
Well, certainly not those that are being paid to be his ministers who are loyal, as you saw earlier from John Healey.
John Healey, exactly. Sam, thanks very much indeed. I hope you get a rest at some point.
Never.
Keep going, Sam.
Not.
Really, really useful to hear.
So, Sam, talking there about the pressures on Kier Starmer, let's just remind you of what he said a short time ago in the aftermath of these results.
Let me be clear, these are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. I was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
Yeah, they've sent a message that they want to change you.
Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that and to plunge the country into chaos.
Kier Starmer there giving his response to the election results. Well, let's get the reaction of the Tories now. Shadow Housing Secretary James Cleverly is here with me. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in. We've got a long way to go as far as the results are concerned. We've only had a fraction of them so far, but so far the Tories do seem to be going backwards, don't they? 2 years after that crushing defeat in the general election, there isn't much sign of building back up, is there?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, we've got to remember that these elections, the benchmark for these elections were the 2022 elections, which was the post-COVID vaccine bounce. We were on, I think, 43% in the opinion polls nationally. So that's what we're judging these results against. But also, it's been a mixed picture. We've had some very, very disappointing results, and of course we have. But we've also gained control of Westminster Council, Wandsworth Council, held on to Harlow, made gains in Peterborough, held on to Fareham in Suella Braverman's patch. So there are areas where we're clearly demonstrating we're moving forward. There are areas, unfortunately, where we've lost really good, hard-working councillors.
Yeah, last time I looked, you were losing around half the seats you were trying to defend. When you see the Labour Party doing so badly, shouldn't you be doing better than this?
Well, it's only 2 years since one of the worst...
It's quite a long time.
No, come on,
well, how
really.
long does it take, then? How long does it take to turn the party around?
Kemi has set about a really important piece of work within the Conservative Party, which is about making sure that we don't make the same mistake that Labour has made, which was to get into office but not have a plan for delivery. We're seeing the same problem with reform-run councils. Worcestershire Council putting their council tax up by 9%, having promised to cut council tax. The Reformer, for example, have lost 70 councillors that were elected this time last year because they haven't got a plan for delivery. And making promises that you can't deliver is OK in the short term, maybe it gets you elected, but it is a catastrophically bad thing to do in government, and we're not going to do that.
How long will it take then for the Tories to be bouncing back, as you say they will?
Well, we're already seeing that we're making gains. It's a very mixed picture. Where we have lost councillors, that is massively disappointing. But in the areas where people recognise, in London, for example, so in my patch in Essex, where we've had some disappointing results, I was knocking on doors yesterday, and people were saying, "But the council's getting abolished, isn't it? So it doesn't really matter." Unfortunately, some people think this is an enhanced opinion poll, but where people are really focused on their public services, like in Peterborough, like in Harlow, like in Fareham, they are actually rewarding the Conservatives because they recognise that we run councils better than anyone else.
You can't say that some areas their votes matter more than others. I mean,
no, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. What I said was the voters understand that in many parts of the country, across parts of East Anglia, in Hampshire, they know those councils are being disbanded, and they are working in their heads the implications of that when they go to vote.
Well, certainly Nigel Farage is very confident about Essex. He referenced it a little bit earlier. Thinks things are going to get a lot worse for you in Essex as the votes get counted later on today. We also spoke to Robert Jenrick of Reform Now, of course, formerly of the Conservative Party, on this show. He said he thinks the Tories are dead now.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? I mean, look, one of the reasons why we left office, one of the reasons why we were elected out of office was on immigration. And Rob was the immigration minister when immigration peaked. He was responsible for asylum hotels when the number of asylum hotels peaked. So I think it's a little bit hypocritical, him saying that it's our fault as a party because we're having to clear up the mess from his time in government. But look, they've got an agenda that they want to push. They seem more focused on attacking the Conservative Party than holding the government to account. That, I think, is a fundamental failure because actually it's Kemi that's been holding the government to account over the Mandelson appointment. It's Kemi that's actually made sure the Chagos Islands and the money that would have gone with it has been killed off as a plan. It's Kemi that's actually defending our Northern Ireland veterans, whilst Reform talk a good fight, but don't bother turning up to do the actual work. And we're seeing that in local government as well.
I'm just being told that you said that Wandsworth, you'd taken Wandsworth. It's actually no overall control, isn't it, in Wandsworth?
My understanding is that the Conservatives will control Wandsworth Council, I believe, and again, things are moving, that there is one independent councillor who I understand will not prevent the Conservatives from actually taking control of
We'll chase that up. OK. Yeah. You talk about Reform attacking the Conservatives. Are you saying that a more conciliatory approach is needed between these parties? Would you work with Reform?
No. What we're saying is that if they're dishonest to win votes, the voters notice. And the point is, we're not going to do that.
At any stage?
We have no a reform of. I've just reminded your viewers that reform's priority seems to be the destruction of the Conservative Party. Why on earth would we want to work with a party that wants to destroy my party? Our focus is on delivering for the British people at local government level and at national level. That's what we're focused on doing. And look, if a party claims it wants to destroy the Conservatives, they shouldn't ever ask. Why would they ask us to go into coalition with them? And if they do ask, again, it's their broken promises once again, and we're seeing that far too often, frankly.
So you're ruling out any kind of pact between now and the general election with Reform?
Kemi's made it absolutely clear. We're not going to do deals with Reform. Reform are trying to destroy the Conservative Party. We are trying to hold the Labour government to account and make sure we get this country back on track.
Labour have had a bad night. We've heard Kier Starmer there saying repeatedly that he doesn't plan to walk away. But if there are challenges, what would your friendly bit of advice from a party that saw a lot of change of leaders? Do you think it's a good idea?
I think Labour's problems are amplified by Kier Starmer, but the problems are deeper than that. They had and still have not got a plan for government. They are crippling the British economy. They are outsourcing all the really important decisions. They're trying to give away money in order to give away British sovereign territory. They're trying to buy goodwill at the EU rather than trying to stand firm on the international stage. As I say, Kier Starmer is amplifying those problems, but the problems run deep. In Kemi, the Conservative Party has got a leader taking us in the right direction. With Labour, they've got a leader taking them in completely the wrong direction.
She's more popular than the party, isn't she?
Yeah.
But is she doing enough to carry the whole party forward? Is it really doing what it should be doing at this stage?
Look, Kemi is more popular than the party. That is a natural and normal thing in politics, particularly when you're in opposition. Her popularity, the fact she's getting cut through, gives the rest of us an opportunity to have those conversations with the voters. And one of the really big things, at a time when integrity is a very valuable asset, people really believe Kemi has got integrity. They look at Nigel Farage with his £5 million donation. They think that's a bit whiffy. They look at Polanski not dealing with anti-Semitism in the Green Party. They're uncomfortable with that. They're looking at Kier Starmer, seemingly robotically enabled to really understand the country that he's Prime Minister of. Then they look back at Kemi and they see someone with a plan, with integrity, who says what she believes. That's the difference.
We'll see what our record is by the end of the day. James Cleverly, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Fascinating to hear from Sir James Cleverly there defending the position of the Conservative Party. Let's get the picture now across England. We're joined, I'm pleased to say, by our correspondent Shimon Freeman-Powell in Birmingham, Shingi Marike in Walsall and Ali Fortescue in Barnsley. Let's go to Shimon first in Birmingham. And Shimon, morning to you. The biggest unitary authority in Europe is going to get its results later on today. What's the expectation?
Absolutely. Well, here the ballot boxes have only just opened and the count is underway, and it is a big day for Birmingham with all 101 seats up for grab. But it's also a big day for the West Midlands as a whole, with full council elections in Solihull, in Sandwell, Walsall and Coventry too. But for the Labour Party in particular, it will be all eyes on Birmingham. Not only is Birmingham the home of lots of high-profile Labour MPs such as Jess Phillip and the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, but it's also been a Labour stronghold for 14 years now. But that could all change after today. Now, to put that into perspective and provide some context for you, after the last local elections, the Labour Party held around 65 seats, so 65 out of 101 seats. But they enter this local elections with just 51 of those seats. That's due to resignations and defections as well. So it means that they've already faced challenges. And this time around, this local election, it looks very different to the last set of local elections. This time around, they're not only competing with the Conservative Party, which is the second largest party here in Birmingham, but they're also having to contend with the Lib Dems, with the rise of Reform too. too, the rise of the Green Party, as well as a plethora of independent candidates, with more than 70 independent candidates on the ballot here in Birmingham. So I suppose this area in Birmingham, it's a really good example of just how fragmented local politics has become. The big question from Birmingham today is not who will win, but it's whether anyone is able to win a full council majority. And if there is a hung council, the question is, what will that actually look like? The main question is, what does a good result look like from here in Birmingham? And if it is a hung council, can those parties realistically work together?
It's going to be a really interesting day, isn't it, Shaman? We'll be getting lots more from you later on. Likewise, Shingi Mararike, who's in Walsall. And Shingi, what's the expectation there?
Morning, Anna. So much of the national conversation is around the end of the two-party system as we know it, and I think Walsall Council was one of the places to tell that story. This is an all-out election. There are 60 seats up for grabs, and it's been Conservative held here since 2019, but up until that point, it was a back and forth between Labour and the Conservatives. But as the polling suggests, Reform could sweep into power here, despite the fact that they have no seats on the council at the moment. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first being the demographic here, which is quite different to the rest of the West Midlands, like, for example, where my colleague Shaman is in Birmingham. It is less ethnically diverse and there is an older population. But then also there is Brexit. Here, 2/3 of people voted to leave the European Union, and that is the kind of politics that Reform can lean into and take advantage of. But there's another element here that I think sits with the national picture, and that's that Rainbow Coalition we've been talking about on Sky News. And on this council, there are 20 independents, and a number of them used to be in the Labour Party, but now they sit as pro-Gaza independents, as an example of how that issue is cutting through on both a local and a national level. And there are also 6 Your Party councillors as well. That's that breakaway party founded by Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn as well. So we're expecting the count to end here between 5 and 6:30. They're just now verifying the ballots and they're going to start that process of voting soon. But what I think we could have here is a Reform Council sitting on quite a shallow majority, that kind of patchwork politics that we're seeing all over the country.
All right, Shingi, for now, Walsall, thank you for that. More, of course, from you. Let's go to Barnsley. Ali Fortescue standing by. So, Ali, give us a sense of the picture there as we wait for the results.
Yeah, morning, Kamali. Morning, Anna. Welcome to Barnsley. As you might be able to see behind me, vote verification is just about to start, and then they're going to start counting, and then we're going to get the results at about 2:30. Obviously, we will bring you those. And what you might be able to see is that there are lots of red rosettes and lots of turquoise rosettes, and nervous-looking candidates, because this is expected to be a straight fight between Labour and Reform. This is a council, and I should say it is all out, so all 63 seats are being fought that Reform really do have in their sights. They want this to be a blueprint for their march through Labour, so-called Red Wall. And I mean, this council is really Labour to its core. It's been Labour since it was created half a century ago. I should say the council leader, the Labour council leader here, has been in his job for about 30 years. It would be a really big upset if Reform do manage to win this council. I think, you know, they've set expectations quite high. I was speaking to a Reform source earlier who said that they're excited about the result. The mood is very good. I think the challenge for Reform is going to be, if they don't actually get control, which is a really big ask, is that going to be seen as a failure to some extent? But every seat that Reform take off Labour here, I think, will be a worry for Labour. And, of course, you know, there's a challenge, too, for Reform now of actually governing. If they do get into power, and they've seen that challenge up and down the country in councils that they took last year. As for Labour, well, I should also say, you know, we are in cabinet territory here. This is the seat of Dan Jarvis, the security minister who attends cabinet. We're not far away from John Healey, the defence secretary seat, Ed Miliband in Doncaster, Yvette Cooper, not too far away either. These are Labour heartlands. It would be a big shock and a really big win for Reform, and would show that they really are marching through those Labour heartlands. I should also finally say that in 2024, they did do quite well in the general election. They got 30% Reform of the Barnsley seats. They didn't win those seats, so we don't know the story of this day yet, but they are hoping for a big upset.
Really interesting one to watch, Ali. We'll be tuning into you throughout the day. Thanks very much indeed for the moment. And just a reminder that we do have a special programme, election programme, from midday with Sophie Ridge. She's going to give you full coverage through the day on Sky News of all those results.
Yeah, well, worth staying with us. We'll have our correspondents all across the country as well, bringing the analysis as we go through the day. Let's just take a look at where we are at this point. As the counting is about to get underway, as we heard from Shingi, Shaman and Ali there in those councils, we can see that Reform have, at this point, had the best of the day so far. It's been a bad night for the Labour Party. It could well get worse in these local elections for Labour, because we're still waiting for some results to come in London, as well as, of course, those results in Scotland and Wales. But Reform, as we can see and as we've heard from their leader, Nigel Farage, think that this is an historic moment in British politics as we see Reform UK doing exceptionally well so far in these local elections.
Well, here to reflect on those results and also look ahead to some of the declarations we'll get later on is the UK and Ireland Chief Executive of Ipsos, Kelly Beaver. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
So what do you make of it so far?
Well, it is an incredibly disappointing start for Labour. There's still a lot to come over the course of the rest of today. But if what we see currently in the data is then perpetuated as we go on throughout the day, they will be extremely disappointed with their results. When I look at it, and I look at some of the predictions and the polling work that was done in advance, what we're seeing really is in line with some of those worst-case scenarios for Labour and best-case scenarios on behalf of Reform. But it's not a huge surprise when you look at the overall mood of the nation, in which these mid-term elections for, the first Labour government in 14 years are actually taking place. We have huge disgruntlement amongst the population around performance of government delivery. We have deep concern about our economy and about cost of living. Only 6% of people are telling us they think the economy is going to get better in the next 12 months. In that setting, this type of electoral event, it isn't a huge surprise that you're seeing disruption amongst the governing party.
Yeah. What's interesting about this set of local elections is, I'm right in saying the turnout has been high, hasn't it? People have come out to vote. So despite it sort of being that malaise of this government nearly 2 years in, people have come out to express how they feel, and it's not been great for the government.
So part of this, of course, is how people are feeling about the general context in the UK, but also politicians, government. We know trust is at a very low ebb in both politics and government, and people are looking for alternatives to what has been the traditional two-party system, which is why you see surges in both Reform vote and also in the Greens themselves as well. And we're seeing them really broaden their base amongst a wider age category than we have seen traditionally. Up to the under 35s now, we see them coming through as the highest party.
Well, yeah, how significant is Reform's performance? I mean, we've seen Nigel Farage heralding it as a kind of historic moment in British politics. Is it that, or is it the midterm blues, as Labour might try to characterise it as, and the time when people traditionally go out to protest?
So let's have a think about what's happened to the Reform vote over the last 6 or so months. We had Reform sitting in November at a good high of 33% on voting intention at a national level, and that started to wane after Christmas, and we saw the momentum come out of the national level voting intention for Reform. They're sitting at around 25% today. But in the local elections, where they have an opportunity on local issues, and people do vote on local issues, they didn't exist in the same capacity at a local level in the last time a lot of these local elections came to the fore. And we are seeing a mix of dissatisfaction with the government and the momentum on the ground and the opportunity on the ground in local areas for people to vote in a different way than they could last time. And that is feeding through. So it is not all pull towards Reform. It is also push against the two parties who traditionally would have held a lot of those seats. And so you're seeing this dynamic play out locally. But there's a broader national momentum question here as well. And with more Reform councillors at a local level, this gives them a stronger foundation, but also an opportunity for it not to go as well. So there's a risk and an opportunity for them with more presence at a local level in the run-in to what will be the next national level general election.
It is interesting, that, isn't it? Because in the councils that they control, the 10 councils, they promised to cut council tax, and council tax was actually raised. Robert Jenrick, sitting right where you were, defended that and said, and despite that, people voted for us anyway. So there's an interesting dynamic going on, isn't there, with the voters and the messages, I guess, they're getting.
Yeah, well, when we ask people, so there's three big things they think about whenever they come into the polling stations. It's, how do I feel about the party? How do I feel about the policies? And how do I feel about the leader? And now, in this context, it's also government performance. And when we ask people about the policies that each of these parties have and who they think has the best policies on the issues that matter most to the British people, which is cost of living and the economy, they are the top concerns today. Reform comes out better than the other parties, in spite of some of the individual things that you've seen. But the top answer, none of the above.
Wow.
So, you know, it is not a political landscape with where people are excited about any of the political parties per se. We see that across a whole range of issues.
The top answer is none of the above.
None of the above. If you strip that out, you can see which political party would be top. But ultimately, yes, if there was a political party called none of the above, they'd be doing very well today.
Yes, someone might rebrand.
Exactly.
The Greens, and I want to ask you about them, because
Yes.
there was a lot of talk ahead of this election that Reform and Greens would benefit. Is it fair to say that they've done fine, but the real test will be later in the day? The seats they really want are going to be counted later?
Yeah, it is a bit early in the day to start talking about their performance, but both in Scotland, so we have done a voting intention poll for the Scottish elections that are taking place as well, and we do anticipate that Greens will do reasonably well in Scotland. And of course, everybody's watching what will happen with the Greens in London as well. So there's much more to come on them throughout the day. But you can see at a national level, if you think about what people told us they'd be voting on, was it how they felt about the state of the nation and the national politics and leadership, or the local? On this local election, national came out higher than local. And so Greens are polling relatively well at a national level too for the Greens in historic comparisons.
Still lots of really interesting results.
There is going to be an interesting day.
Kelly, thank you so much for coming in. It's really interesting to get your analysis. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, let's just take a look at the Prime Minister, Sir Kier Starmer, who told us he's going to stay and fight, but he gets that something has gone wrong. He was speaking to activists a little while ago.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to all of you. I know how hard you have worked, how hard all of our members and activists have worked. And I just wanted to say a few words to you about the results, because the results are tough. They are very tough, and there is no sugarcoating this. We have lost brilliant Labour representatives across the country. These are people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And that hurts. And it should hurt. And I take responsibility. When voters send a message like this, we must reflect and we must respond. I think the vast majority of people do understand that we face huge challenges as a country. We've had a series of economic shocks in recent years, and there's a very difficult international situation that we face. They know that. But they still want their lives to improve. They still want to see the change that we promised. They know the status quo is letting them down, and they're frustrated. They don't feel the change. I understand that. I get that. I was elected to deal with these challenges. We made some big calls to stabilise our public finances, to invest in our public services, not to get dragged into a war in Iran. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. One of which was that, although we were right to level with the public about the scale and depth of the challenges we faced, we didn't do enough to convince them that things will get better, that things will improve. The hope. And that is why in coming days I'm going to set out the steps that we will take to deliver the change that they want and that they deserve, so that every child can go as far as their talent or ability will take them, not held back by poverty, so that every community can have what it needs, a secure, safe place for everybody to live. Households and families not feeling constantly held back by a cost of living crisis. And a Britain where everybody can feel proud of the place where they live and they work. So these are tough results. But tough days like this, they don't weaken my resolve to deliver the change that I promised at the general election. They strengthen my resolve to do so. Thank you so much for listening.
So, Kier Starmer there, talking to Labour activists. Just want to bring in this, I was going to call it a tweet, can you call that? And a post on X from Diane Abbott, Labour MP, of course, saying there's no denying that these election results are going to be very bad for Labour. Yes, Kier Starmer is very unpopular, but it's the policies that drive that unpopularity. Simply changing the leader without changing the policies will not avert disaster in 2029.
Yeah, kind of fascinating. Diane Abbott's the mother of the House, of course, longer-serving MP in the House, who's still sitting as an independent, having had the Labour whip taken away. So no reason necessarily for Diane Abbott to be loyal to the Prime Minister, but not taking the opportunity on social media to get in and give him a kick and say he must go, rather saying that it's about policy and not changing the leader and changing the leader won't avert that disaster. Let's get the sense from our correspondent Lucy McDade to where we are right now. Lucy, so give us, we heard from the Prime Minister there. Where are we at this point, 9:45 in the morning? The results in England, in many places, we're expecting more, of course, and we've heard from the Prime Minister saying that he is not going to be going anywhere.
Well, there's been such a build-up to these local elections for weeks and months even, so much so that the Prime Minister's fate has now been tied to the results, what we will see throughout the day. And that is the problem for Kier Starmer now. We heard him there commenting about the results, saying that Labour has made mistakes, that these are a very tough, upsetting set of results. The problem is we are going to get more that could make things even worse for Labour. Let's not forget, you mentioned the Diane Abbott post on social media there. I think she kind of cuts to the question that a lot of MPs will be asking themselves today. Yes, in Westminster, we can talk about leadership speculation, whether it's Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner having private conversations about what happens next. When you speak to people outside of Westminster, a lot of the things they bring up are policy decisions that this government has made, whether it's over winter fuel, whether it was over inheritance tax, the U-turn over welfare. Time and time again, the Prime Minister's judgment has been called into question because of certain policy decisions. I've had a couple of texts from Labour MPs this morning who are making that point, that actually replacing the leader might not necessarily be the best thing to do. Having said all of that, there are still some big results to come. I mean, look at Wales, for example. Wales has been winning, Labour has been winning elections in Wales for more than 100 years. Nigel Farage, the Reform leader, you heard him this morning saying that in terms of results, Wales will be the most historically significant. So I think a lot of people are waiting to see what happens. Therefore, the Prime Minister's fate, I think, depends on what happens over the next 24 hours, whether or not restless MPs come up and decide to put their heads above the parapet. What could save Kier Starmer? We've said this before, and we may be saying this again come the end of the weekend. What might save Kier Starmer is the fact that there is no clear successor to take over from him. What he has made very, very clear is that despite a bad set of results, even if they will get worse, it is a Prime Minister that is going to come out fighting and isn't going to go very quietly.
Thanks very much indeed, Lucy. Really interesting. More analysis throughout the day, of course, as those other results come in from England, Scotland and Wales.
We're looking forward to seeing those results, seeing what it tells us about future British politics. Now, as we've been saying, it's been a really bad night for Labour across the country. The Prime Minister claims that he takes full responsibility and admits, he says, that he must reflect on the message that's been sent. Now, as we've been saying, more results will come in throughout the day. Now, Nigel Farage has called what's happened an historic moment in British politics.
Yeah, certainly a successful night for Reform. Let's speak to former Reform UK Director of Communications, then Gawain Towler, and journalist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. Very good morning to both of you. And Labour and Reform very much in the headlines as the main part of the story from overnight, the results so far. Sonia, let's talk about Labour first of all. Just how disappointed will Kier Starmer and the Labour Party be?
Well, I think we've already heard Kier Starmer talking on your programme, very disappointed. I think people knew rationally that the losses were going to be bad. And as you say, we've only had some of the results in so far, but the indications aren't good for the other council results we're going to be getting today and for the Scottish and Welsh election. I think the issue is if you're a Labour MP and you're in your seat, there's only ever been a Labour council, and you're now seeing swathes of your councillors being swept away by Reform. Emotionally, that's like a gut punch, essentially, and it's also going to leave the party in a significantly worse state in terms of its electoral machinery going into the general election, because these councillors were the backbone of, doing the local voter ID, getting people out to vote on the day of elections, figuring out where people, where your voters are and who you should be getting out. So I think it's really disappointing for Labour, even though people knew it was going to be a very bad set of results in advance.
Gawain, let's bring you in at this point then. We've heard from Nigel Farage, and I spoke to Robert Jenrick a little while ago. A big night for Reform, so can this continue?
Well, yes. I think it's going to. Of course it is, because we've only had a small number of the seats that were voted on being counted. And you've got to look at, coming up, it's going to be things like Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex. These are Tory-facing rather than most of the places being Labour. But I think Labour must be breathing a huge sigh of relief in some ways that most of the councils that are being fought yesterday and being counted today are only going up in thirds. Wigan, we won every seat that was contested. But Labour holds the council because the council only up in the thirds. And so therefore you can see, though it's been a pretty bruising night for Labour, it could have been one awful lot worse. And it's been an excellent night for us, but it could have been a lot better.
Interesting you say it could have been a lot better. Obviously the results still to come in later on today. To what extent is this a mid-term protest vote? Some Labour supporters might say, you always get people voting against incumbent parties in local elections, and they'll come back to us at the general election. What would you say to them?
I think that could be quite a vain hope. I mean, last year a mid-term? No, but Reform stormed it last year, winning 10 councils. We've won 2 councils so far. No, this isn't midterms. This is a fundamental realignment of politics in this country. And I know we keep on talking about how the vote is splitting in various different ways with the five parties. But my suspicion is what we are seeing is the chaos before realignment. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see there being 2 major parties going into the next election. It just won't be the 2 major parties that we have today.
Sorry, go on then. Who is it going to be then, Gawain, in your opinion?
Well, I think it could well be Reform and the Greens going into the next election.
Fascinating.
And I think, what's very interesting so far, and again, the counts are very limited so far, is that in London, Reform on 13%, which is 13 points up, but it's still only 13%. However, outside London, we're on 34%. And that is a massive, and it's way above our polling nationally.
Sonia, what do you make of that prediction that Reform and Greens could be dominating politics in future rather than that traditional Labour-Tory divide?
Well, I definitely think it's looking existential for the 2 main parties, and it has been for a while in the polls. However, I would probably sound a bit more of a cautionary note. I don't think this is just a mid-term protest against the Labour government. I think people are feeling really cheesed off with mainstream politics, but I think there is always inevitably at the next general election, there will be a bit of some people returning to the 2 mainstream parties. I'm pretty sure we're going to see that effect. Whether it's enough to really materially change the result, I don't know. I think what's interesting projecting forward is that if you look at Reform's polling, it does seem like they've sort of topped out a bit and even declined in the polls in recent weeks and months, very slightly, even though they are still topping the polls. So that may not be too much. That may not be too much of an issue in a first past the post system where you've got 5 parties effectively competing in England, because actually, sorts of levels at which reform is polling right now, it could even be enough, say 30%, to give it a majority in Parliament potentially. But there is that. With the Greens, what I think is quite interesting in the last couple of weeks is that you've seen Zach Polanski's personal ratings take quite a nosedive. So again, I think there are questions about longevity there and what these polls will look like going to the next general election. But without a doubt, this is really seismic for our two-party system. And if you look at the polls and you've been reading the polls, it's been a long time coming. And I think what it represents is that people were very cheesed off with the last Conservative government. That's why they voted Labour in 2024, why Labour got that massive majority on actually not that big a share of the vote. But now people have fallen out of love with Labour pretty quickly. And I think you've seen increasing levels of disillusionment in politics and decreasing trust in political institutions. And that is driving people to the populist parties of the right and left, to Reform and the Greens. They think, hey, the two mainstream parties haven't delivered. We might as well give these people who've never been in government a chance. They may find themselves disappointed.
Let's bring Gawain in, because he was chuckling to some of what you had to say, Sonia. But Gawain, look, you chuckled when this idea Sonia said about you guys sort of levelling off in your support, but that was actually reflected in when we spoke to Kelly Beaver from Ipsos, who said that while the polling high has come down a little bit, there does seem to be a slight levelling off of reform support. We don't have loads of time, Gawain, so about 45 seconds if you can.
Well, I think one of the things everybody always says, is don't believe the polls. You've got to, the only poll that counts is the ones that are counted in the vote. The only poll that counts is the vote. And in the vote, we're significantly up on our current polling. The idea of there being shy reformers, I think, has been borne out in these results overnight. So, yes, there has been some dipping in the polling, absolutely. But I think it's the voting that matters. And in the voting, as I say, outside London, we're on 34%. That's way up on our polling. So I'm sanguine. We've got a long way to go.
Sonia, I think we have to come back in, but we're just completely out of time. I'm so sorry. We
you guys need to can pick this up again another time.
To pick up the phone to each other. But we are out of time. Sonia and Gawain, thanks both very much indeed. We're out of time. Leah is up next with the latest and a special programme with Sophie at midday. Don't go anywhere.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose